Chapter 42. Messing around. Gu Yundong wanted to bring Madame Yang to see a doctor. In the past, when she was in the Gu family, Gu Dajiang had brought her to the county capital. Unfortunately, at that time, the money was in the hands of Madame Zhao. Gu Dajiang had limited savings, so he naturally did not see many doctors. Just like that, every time Mrs. Zhao saw them go out, she would cause a scene. Gu Yundong had also asked around a few days ago. There were many medical centers in Xuanhe Prefecture, the largest of which was Huimin Medical Center in the south of the city. There was a doctor with the surname He who had once cured 2 patients like her mother. Doctor He had gone on a long trip to see a patient some time ago and had only returned yesterday. Gu Yundong only brought Madame Yang over. Dr. He's medical skills were high, so his status in the medical hall was naturally not low. Hence, the price of consultation was also expensive. When Gu Yundong went over, there were still 3 patients in front of her. She waited for nearly an hour before it was her turn. Madame Yang was a little nervous. She grabbed Gu Yundong's hand tightly. Dong dong. Mother, let the doctor examine your pulse first. Don't worry, it's fine. I'm here. Dr. He, on the other hand, had a benevolent look on his face. He asked a few questions before extending his hand. He closed his eyes slightly and carefully checked her pulse. However, the more time passed, the more he frowned. Gu Yundong gradually had a very bad feeling. When Dr. He retracted his hand, Gu Yundong hurriedly asked, "How's my mother?" Dr. He did not reply. He only stood up and walked behind Madame Yang to look at the back of her head. Madame Yang immediately became nervous. Gu Yundong hurriedly patted her hand to comfort her. Dr. He stared at her carefully for a long time before sitting back down. However, his expression was not good. He asked Gu Yundong, "Did the other doctors give her acupuncture before?" Actually, every time she went to the clinic, it was Gu Dajiang who brought her there. Gu Yundong did not follow. However, she really knew that there was acupuncture or not. Yes, they did. When I was in Yongning Prefecture, a doctor took a look at my mother. At that time, he inserted a few needles and said that they could dispel the clotted blood. However, after the acupuncture, my mother fainted for a day. The doctor said that this was a normal phenomenon. If we went to his place a few more times, the clotted blood would slowly dissipate. However, after Yongning Prefecture fell into chaos, my parents didn't go there again. Nonsense. Quack. Dr. He cursed angrily. Madame Yang was so frightened that she turned her head and hugged Gu Yundong, closing her eyes tightly. Dr. He took 2 deep breaths. His tone was still hard. The human brain is the most complicated. How can you randomly inject needles when you're not confident that you can treat it? Dispel the clotted blood. You're simply a quack. Gu Yundong's expression turned solemn. Dr. He means that my mother. Sigh, if it was before, one was still confident that one could cure her. Now that she has been treated by that quack, I'm only 30% confident. If there's an accident, it might backfire and I won't even be able to save her life. Dr. He waved his hand. It's better to maintain the current situation. At least she's alive. Is there no other way? Dr. He shook his head and paused for a moment. As if he had thought of something, he said, "There's someone who might be able to treat her." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Who? Imperial Physician Song. He came from the Imperial Hospital. I've been taught by him many times before. It's a pity that he's gone traveling now. I don't know when he'll return. As long as there was hope. Gu Yundong immediately said, "Then can one trouble Dr. He? When Imperial Physician Song comes back, get someone to send a message to Fish Rice Alley." With that, she took out 5 taels of silver and handed it over. Chapter 43. Preparing to leave. Chapter 43. Preparing to leave. Of the 5 taels of silver, 1 tael was for the consultation fee, and the rest was for Dr. He's trouble. Fish Rice Alley was where Aunt Ku lived. Aunt Ku also agreed that she should treat Madame Yang's illness as soon as possible. There were 2 young children in the family, and Father Gu had been separated from them. It was not a good thing for Gu Yundong to hold on alone. Dr. He glanced at her but only accepted 1 tael of silver. Don't worry. I'll help you pass on the message. Take these back. One won't take them. Dr. He said. However, you have to remember not to find those unreliable quacks again. It's a small matter to waste money, but it's a big matter to get your mother killed. Now, in Xuanhe Prefecture, I'm afraid only Imperial Physician Song can treat your mother. It's not a bad thing to wait longer. You can't eat hot tofu in a haste. Gu Yundong smiled sincerely. Thank you, Dr. He. 111 remember it. Dr. He reminded her about the things she had to pay attention to, and prescribed a warm and nourishing prescription for her. Madame Yang's body was indeed not very good. Not to mention eating her fill and wearing warm clothes all these years. Even the illness of pregnancy that she had not recovered from after giving birth back then needed to be treated. Gu Yundong brought Madame Yang back to Aunt Ke's house and told her about the situation. The latter nodded to show that she understood. Don't worry. When I hear from Imperial Physician Song, I'll get someone to send you a message. Thus, Gu Yundong packed her things the next day and prepared to go to the village where they had settled down. Before she left, she cooked a feast. Niet Song also came over to eat. This was the first time he had eaten Gu Yundong's cooking. He immediately regretted it. If I had known that your cooking was so delicious, I would have come earlier. Aunt Ke gave him a sidelong glance. Shouldn't you do something to repay her for the meal? Niet Song was stunned. Do what? He had already done everything he could to help. Now that she was about to leave, was he supposed to send her there personally? That wasn't good, right? Not to mention that men and women shouldn't touch each other, he didn't have the time. There had been so many things going on recently. Aunt Ku was a little helpless about her nephew's stubbornness. No wonder her father wanted to send him to the government office to train. She slapped Niet Song hard. She and her family are young and weak. They don't have anyone to back them up. They're going to unfamiliar places tomorrow. What if they're bullied? Are we going to let her come all the way to the prefectural city to ask for help? Niet Song suddenly came to a realization. He swallowed the chicken in his mouth and stood up. Wait, I'll be back in a while. Gu Yundong laughed and looked at Aunt Ku. Actually, young Master Nye has helped me enough. No matter where one go, I still have to rely on myself in the end. Hypocrite. Why didn't you stop Niet Song before he left? One know what kind of person you are. Don't say such meaningless words in front of me. Gu Yundong laughed. Thank you, Aunt. In fact, you've helped Niet Song a lot. You don't know how much he benefited from the last time he led the way to capture the bandit leader. Needless to say, the government office, Niet Song's father had a whole new level of respect for him and relied on him a lot. Niet Song returned quickly and handed her a letter. Your village belongs to Fengkai County. I don't know anyone there, but Constable Jiang from our government office has a good relationship with Constable Li from the county office over there. If you need help with some small matters later, look for him. This is a letter from Constable Jiang. Without waiting for Gu Yundong's reaction, he said mysteriously, 111 give you something good. You have to keep it well. Chapter 44. Departure. Niet Song took out a copper coin. There was a hole in the copper coin, so it could not be used. Was this a good thing? Gu Yundong examined the copper coin for a long time but could not figure it out. Her puzzled gaze landed on Nye Kong. All right, stop keeping us in suspense. Aunt Ke glared at him. Niet Song coughed lightly and said, when I was looking for Constable Jiang to write a letter, His Excellency happened to pass by. After knowing your situation, he asked me to go over and gave me this copper coin. The Magistrate of Fengkai County was promoted by Our Excellency. If you have any trouble in the future, you can give this copper coin to the County Magistrate. He will help you. Your lord is really a good person. I wish him a peaceful life. Gu Yundong did not know that the dignified magistrate was so free that he would pay attention to a small fry like her. The corner of Niet Song's mouth twitched. Other than saying that the lord was a good person and would live a peaceful life, did she have any other description? But Gu Yundong was right. How could the magistrate be so free? The reason why he remembered her was entirely because Niet Song had mentioned it several times. Most importantly, it was the portrait of the person she had drawn. Because of that character painting, the government office caught the bandit leader in just 3 days. Coincidentally, the new emperor had just ascended the throne and was paying attention to the disaster rebellion. The magistrate was the first to make a contribution, and it was a great merit. It also confirmed the rumors that the new emperor had been favored by the heavens and showed his face in front of the new emperor. At this time, The new emperor was about to promote talents and boldly reorganize the officialdom to plant his own power. With this, the prefect magistrate became a person on the new emperor's list. His position here expired, so it was basically no problem for him to be promoted to the capital. Wasn't it Gu Yundong who had helped him so much? And she was a girl. Didn't that leave a deep impression on the magistrate? Gu Yundong accepted the copper coin. She would not reject such a good thing. In this day and age, money was not enough. She also needed power. Otherwise, no matter how much money she had, she would not be able to keep it. It would be best if she would not need this copper coin and letter. If she could use them, she would naturally not let them go for nothing. Gu Yundong thanked him and put away the letter and the copper coin. The next morning, just as the city gate opened, Gu Yundong left Fish Rice Alley with her family. Aunt Ku did not go out to see them off. She was not in a good mood and had been staying in the room. When there was no sound outside the courtyard, she sighed and slowly walked out. It was as if there was no one in the empty house at all. The children's voices that had been chattering 2 days ago had disappeared. Aunt Ku walked to the kitchen and seemed to be able to smell a faint fragrance. Although they had not been together for long, Aunt Ku did like those 2 children. Even the ignorant Madame Yang made her pity her. She admired Gu Yundong, who had brought her mother and siblings all the way to Xuanhe Prefecture safely. If this little girl was not a girl, her future achievements would be high. What a pity! Aunt Ku returned to the central room and saw a piece of paper on the table. She picked it up and realized that it was a recipe. On it were 5 or 6 dishes that she had liked to eat recently. This girl! Aunt Ku laughed. At this moment, Gu Yundong had already left the city gate and was riding a carriage to Yongfu village. The carriage was rented. Now that he had money, Gu Yundong would definitely not mistreat herself. It would take 3 days to walk from the prefectural city to Yongfu village. If he rode a fast horse, it would only take 1 day. Chapter 45. Yongfu village. Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunka were also a little reluctant to part with Aunt Ku. When they first got into the carriage, they were still a little tired. After walking out of the city gate for a while, they finally became energetic. The 2 little ones sat in the carriage for the first time. The cushion under their buttocks was soft, and there were doors blocking them on all sides. Once the curtains were lowered, the sun would not be able to reach them, and they would not be able to see them. Eldest sister. Gu Yunshu leaned against the window and looked out for a long time before turning his head. His face was red as he said, "Is Yongfu village very far? Are there many people? Where are we going to live? Are we going to build a house? Why do you have so many questions?" Gu Yundong smiled. Gu Yunshu chuckled. Eldest sister definitely doesn't know either. It's fine. We'll know everything when we get there. Gu Yundong had already leaned into Gu Yundong's arms. He held the peanuts that Aunt Ku had given him and ate them in small bites like a hamster. Madame Yang was carrying a huge bag in her arms. There were clothes for the family of 4, several new and old sets, shoes made by Auntie Ku, and a large bag of pastries. There were also 2 baskets in the carriage that contained some things they had bought in the prefectural city a few days ago. Although there were not many, they were all neatly arranged. Gu Yundong looked at the scenery outside the window, which was moving backward bit by bit. She was also looking forward to it and excited. Finally, she was going to have a new home. The carriage was not very fast. In addition, there were 2 children in the carriage, so it was comfortable. Hence, after traveling for a day, they were only about to reach Fengkai County. Fortunately, they entered the city before the city gate closed. It was already late. Gu Yundong brought the few of them to stay at an inn for the night. They only set off for Yongfu village the next day when the city gate opened. Zeng had indeed found a good village for them. Yongfu village was almost 4 hours away from the county city. It would take 2 hours to reach the town, and 3 days to reach the prefectural city. This was only the time to walk. It would definitely be faster to take the carriage or an ox cart. Therefore, it was still early when they set off from the county city and arrived at Yongfu village in a carriage. At this moment, many people had already been busy in the field for a while. Almost every family was busy making breakfast. The children in the village were also gathered at the entrance of the village in 2s and 3s to play. When they suddenly saw a large carriage coming over, they immediately ran up chattering. There were only 2 families in the village who had ox carts. The carriages were very expensive. They could not even afford to ride them, let alone buy them. Now that they saw the energetic and tall horse, they immediately surrounded it curiously. Who was this? Why did he come to their village in a carriage? What was even more strange was that there was a pushcart dragged behind the carriage. The coachman slowed down. Yundong opened the curtains and saw a child walking to the side. She waved at him and handed him a candy. "Do you know how to get to the village chief's house?" she asked. The child looked to be about the same size as Gu Yunshu. When he saw the sweets, his eyes lit up and he was about to drool. Their village was not very rich, so they did not have many chances to eat sweets. Children like them could only have a bite during the new year. He nodded hurriedly. "I know one, no. I'll bring you there." He stuffed the candy into his mouth and ran to lead the way. The other children were envious. If they had known earlier, they would have run faster and been the first to speak. Only then did Gu Yundong put down the curtains. However, the next moment, she suddenly lifted the curtains and looked at the figure that flashed past not far away. She felt that it was familiar. Chapter 46. Village Chief. However, the figure flashed too quickly and disappeared before she could confirm. Gu Yundong put down the curtains and asked the coachman to follow the child to the village chief's house. Yongfu Village was a village with a variety of surnames. Many of the family's ancestors had fled here. After taking root here for a long time, they slowly developed to their current scale. The village chief's family name was Chen, and he lived in the center of the village. His family background was not bad, and the house he lived in was the only green brick house in the village. When the carriage stopped in front of his house, there were already many people following behind it. Gu Yundong was shocked when he came down, especially the children. They looked at her eagerly with an expression that said, "Do you have any more questions for me?" It was as if they would be able to earn sweets the moment she opened her mouth. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. After Madame Yang came down with a bag, he turned around and carried Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunka down. She asked the coachman to wait for her outside for the time being before knocking on the village chief's door. The commotion outside the door was naturally heard by the people inside. Hence, just as Gu Yundong raised his hand, a young woman dressed like a married lady walked out. "Who are you looking for?" As she spoke, she looked at the large carriage behind them. Before Gu Yundong could reply, a child behind him said loudly, "They're looking for the village chief." As soon as she finished speaking, a tall male voice came from the house. "Let someone in first." The woman moved aside and smiled as she let Gu Yundong in. The moment the door closed, the villagers outside could not see what was going on inside. The village chief's name was Chen Liang. He was about 40 to 50 years old and was very thin. He did not put on any airs and looked quite easy to talk to. Gu Yundong handed over the household registration document. Chen Liang narrowed his eyes and stared at it for a long time before nodding and saying, "The junior officer told me before that 3 families want to settle down here in our village. The other 2 families came over a few days ago. I thought you should be here soon." He looked up at Gu Yundong and Madame Yang, who were standing behind her. He found it strange that the person in charge was such a 13-year-old girl. However, he lowered his head to look at the document and could not help but frown. "The house owner is Gu Dajiang?" "Yes, the owner is my father. It's just that he got separated from us when we were escaping from the wilderness. If he went missing, the government usually thinks that he has already." Chen Liang stopped mid-sentence. Most people who went missing on the way to escape were dead. There were rules in the government for these things, but the document still wrote Gu Dajiang, which meant that this girl had already talked about the matter in the government. Since that was the case, he would just follow the documents. "All right, I understand." Chen Liang closed the document and began to talk about serious matters. "Since you've settled in our village, you'll be people in the village from now on. Because you were sent by the imperial court, you don't have to buy a homestead. You can get a mu of land according to the number in your family. If you think it's too small, you can buy more." It was because the new emperor was benevolent and gave special treatment to the refugees who were affected this time. However, you can't choose the location of the homestead. There are only 3 in total. Moreover, you came the latest and the other 2 have already chosen. You can go and take a look later. If you feel that the location is not good and want to buy another place, you can tell me. If you're satisfied, then find someone to build the house as soon as possible. It's almost winter. If you don't hurry, it'll be difficult to do. Also, before the house is built, you can stay in the villagers' houses. You have to give them some rent. Of course. Gu Yundong had also considered it. Chapter 47. Cold-blooded wolf whelps Chen Liang was very satisfied with her attitude. She was reasonable. Hence, she subconsciously lowered her voice. If you don't want to live in the village, you can rent a house in town. It's the same. Before you, a family lived in town. It's just a little troublesome to go back and forth. I'll stay in the village. Since she was going to build a house, she would definitely have to visit the homestead often. Not to mention that it was far from town. Even her brother and sister would not follow her back and forth. Chen Liang slapped his thigh. All right, then you'll stay in the village. One originally thought that since you're a family, you can live in an empty room of a family. Now that your father isn't around, it's not very convenient. How about this? My sister-in-law has an empty house. Her man is gone, and she and her daughter are the only ones living in their house. You can take care of each other when you go over. I'll give you 200 copper coins a month. What do you think? Gu Yundong thought about it. The main reason was that they had too little choice. There was probably no place to live other than the widow's house. She was unfamiliar with this village. It was unrealistic for her to choose for herself. 200 copper coins won't be a problem, but can I take a look at the house over there first? Chen Liang nodded. Sure. Second daughter-in-law, bring Miss Gu over and let your aunt know. The young woman who came to open the door immediately replied, Got it, father. Miss, follow me. Gu Yundong asked Madame Yang and the other two to wait for her here while she went over. As soon as she left, Chen Liang's wife, Madame Zhou, could not help but whisper, Why did you ask her to stay with second sister-in-law? What's wrong? Isn't it quite good? Second sister-in-law lives with Yulon. There are no adult males in the Gu family. No one will gossip if they live there. Second sister-in-law can also earn a rent. But second sister-in-law's personality. What personality? Chen Liang had an expression that said, Isn't she quite capable and virtuous? Madame Zhou immediately stopped talking. Men were all careless. In addition, the other party lived as a widow, so it was not easy to interact with eldest uncle. All these years, Madame Zhou had basically been the one who interacted with the other family. Madame Fong liked to take advantage of others. However, when others suffered, she still had an innocent and aggrieved expression, making people feel suffocated. If not for the fact that she no longer had a man, Madame Zhou would not have liked to interact with her. Forget it. Actually, it was not a big problem. The Gu family would just stay until the house was built. Madame Zhou did not say anything. Gu Yundong returned not long after. The girl called Yulon came with her. She was 2 years older than Gu Yundong and looked very cheerful and lively. Uncle, my mother agreed to let the Gu sisters stay at my house. Don't worry, I'll take good care of them. Chen Liang immediately smiled. All right, let's leave it at that for now. He turned to look at Gu Yundong. Do you want to look at the homestead now or later? Let's do it now. Gu Yundong saw the owner of the house, Madame Fong. She only took a glance at Madame Fang's personality and did not completely understand it, but she knew that she was definitely a different kind of person from Aunt Ku. This did not matter. Moreover, she had asked the village chief's daughter-in-law. There were a few widows in this village, but the rest either had sons or didn't have enough rooms. There was no other choice. Chen Yulon took the initiative. Uncle, I'll accompany Sister Gu to visit the homestead too. Let's go. Chen Liang stood up and walked out first. Chen Yulon led Gu Yundong to the back. However, they had not walked far when Gu Yundong paused. It was indeed him. She had not seen wrongly in the carriage. Could it be that the youth he had met in the prefecture city was also from this village? Seeing that she had stopped, Chen Yulon followed her gaze curiously. She immediately trembled and whispered into her ear, Don't look at him. He's a cold-blooded wolf. He doesn't care about anyone. Chapter 48. His name is Shao Qingyuan, cold-blooded wolf? And they didn't care about their relatives? Gu Yundong recalled the 2 times he saw him. The first time was when he kicked the constable. The second time was when she took revenge and hung shopkeeper Pan up a tree. If that was the case, he was indeed ruthless. When she wanted to look again, the young man had already disappeared. Chen Yulan patted her chest. Fortunately, he didn't look over here. Sister Gu, let me tell you, you have to be careful when you meet Shao Qingyuan in the future. He doesn't care if you're a girl or not. If you provoke him, he'll beat you up. He's a heartless person. It's fine if he's not grateful that the Shao family raised him up, but he doesn't even care about his grandfather, who treats him well. His grandfather fell out with the Shao family for him and brought him out to live alone. In the end, his grandfather fell seriously ill. Shao Qingyuan didn't even care and left his grandfather to fend for himself in the house. No one even collected his grandfather's corpse after he died. As for him, he started eating fish and meat in 2 days. Yulan, what are you talking about? Hurry up. It's getting late. We'll delay lunch later. Chen Liang had already walked for quite a distance when he turned around. Gu Yundong was pulled by Chen Yulan and did not move. Chen Yulan quickly kept quiet and pulled Gu Yundong to catch up. Gu Yundong did not quite believe Chen Yulan's words. Shao Qingyuan did not seem like the person she was talking about. But who cared? It had nothing to do with her. The homestead Chen Liang mentioned was at the end of the village, not far from the foot of the mountain. There was no choice. After all, it was assigned by the higher-ups. It could not be the center of the village. The other 2 houses were not in the same place as hers. This area was a little deserted, and there were only 2 or 3 families around. Gu Yundong quite liked it. It was just that 1 mu of land was a little small. Although it was extremely expensive to buy a house that was 100 square meters in the modern era, and 1 mu of land was more than 600 square meters, Gu Yundong wanted to build a large courtyard here. He could plant some things in the future, and it would be best if everyone had a room. Even if they didn't need it very big now, there would be times when they needed it in the future. She walked around the homestead before walking up to the village chief and saying, "One want to buy another mu in that direction. How much silver does it cost?" Chen Liang was a little surprised. There were only 4 of them at the moment. Was there a need for it to be so big? However, since they wanted to buy it, there was naturally no problem. Chen Yulan's eyes lit up and she looked at Gu Yundong eagerly. The location here is rather remote. If it's a mu of land, let's make it 5 taels of silver. If it was the center of the village, this price would not be the same. Okay. Since they had already decided on the location, Chen Liang brought Gu Yundong back. This time, everyone in the village knew that Gu Yundong had fled to this place. The way they looked at her changed. It was no longer the envious and fearful expression they had when they saw the big carriage. Instead, there was a hint of sympathy and disdain. The children who were originally surrounding the carriage and watching curiously were also brought home by their own adults. Some of them even muttered before they left, "So it's a rented carriage." One thought it was a rich family. They're putting on airs and pretending to be young people from rich families. No wonder they only gave 1 piece of candy and made the other children run with them. They're really stingy. Gu Yundong did not hear that. She had already entered the village chief's house and bought the mu of land. The village chief would settle the deed another day. "There's one more thing I want to trouble you with, village chief." Chen Liang accepted the silver and let her sit. "Go ahead." Chapter 49. Preparing to build a house. It's about building the house, Gu Yundong said. "I've just arrived, so I don't know who's familiar with this place. So I want to trouble the village chief to help me find a reliable person. The salary is 40 copper coins a day. I want provide food for them." She had asked around. Usually, the construction of houses here cost 30 copper coins a day, but they had to pay for the lunch. She was living in a widow's house now, so it was not convenient. "It's not a problem for me to help you find constructors." Chen Liang frowned slightly. "I'm just afraid that you won't be satisfied." "What are you talking about?" "The village chief will definitely find the most suitable people. If I were to do it myself, one would really be clueless and wouldn't even know that one had been scammed. However, one might have more requests. Please help me communicate with them to avoid any unhappiness. This is 2 taels of silver. It's the fee for your help." Gu Yundong took out a piece of silver and handed it over. Chen Liang immediately declined her. What are you doing? I'm the village chief of Yongfu village. I'll help you find a few people. How can I accept your silver? You can't say that. Although you're the village chief, one can't push everything onto you and ask you to help, right? You know that my father isn't around. It's not convenient for a young lady like me to do many things, and they might not listen to me. If you help me find someone, you have to communicate with them, and you have to help me supervise them in the future. This isn't within the responsibility of the village chief. I can't let you help me do so many things, right? Then what kind of person am I? If you don't accept this fee, then I can forget about building my house. Hey, you little girl! Chen Liang didn't even know that this young lady was so good at doing things. There was no one else in the central room. Other than him, there was only his wife, Madame Zhou. After hesitating for a moment, he still accepted the silver. All right, don't worry and leave this to me. Take this silver as your payment for my service. Thank you, Uncle Chen. Gu Yundong changed his words and smiled. One have to go back and think about how the house should look like. Can I give you the blueprint tomorrow? All right, I'll look for someone in the afternoon. Come and meet me tomorrow morning and we can start work. Gu Yundong said a few more words to Chen Liang. Seeing that it was getting late, she left a bag of pastries that she had bought from the county this morning and brought the three of them out. The carriage followed behind them and pulled the things to the rented place. As soon as they left, Madame Zhou opened the bag on the table. When she saw that it was the famous date cake in the county, she was even more satisfied. This young lady is much more sensible than the previous two families. The Wang family and the He family talked nicely, saying that the village chief had the ability to help. In the end, you found someone for them, but they're still unsatisfied. It's as if you've gained something from it. They say that it's not easy for them to come all the way here because they're poor. They keep pressing down on your salary. 20 copper coins a day is too much. Now, people are not willing to help them build it. They've been here for 5 to 6 days, but they haven't found anyone. I reckon that by the time the Gu family's house is built, their houses haven't even appeared. Chen Liang actually liked the Gu family more. Even without 2 taels of silver, he felt that this young lady's words were better. He was willing to help her. However, he still scolded Madame Zhou. She won't see the workers until tomorrow. The Gu family might not be satisfied with the people one find. Don't talk nonsense. Regardless of whether she's satisfied or not, she has given us pastries and silver in advance. As for the other 2 families, they didn't even thank us. With this comparison, Chen Liang really had nothing to say. Moreover, the Gu family had given him money without even seeing the workers. This meant that they trusted him. Chen Liang felt quite happy. Chapter 50. House model. And yet, Gu Yundong did not trust him. She trusted Nye Kong. Back then, her main requirement was that the village chief's character was passable. Although Chen Liang had his own thoughts, he was very reliable about big matters. He would definitely not cheat her when it came to building a house. It was normal for humans to have little thoughts. Now, as long as she planned the structure of the house as soon as possible, those people could start to work as soon as possible and move in. When they arrived at the Chen family's second branch, Gu Yundong took down all the things in the carriage. Chen Yulan enthusiastically helped her move them. There were not many things. There were only 2 baskets. She did not need Chen Yulan's help at all. Gu Yundong and Madame Yang each took one. Then, she paid the coachman and let him leave. The Chen family's second branch was not far from the village chief's house. There was a small courtyard. There were only the mother and daughter at home, but it was quite clean. Madame Fong looked like a very weak woman with a faint smile. As soon as she saw them enter, she pulled Madame Yang to talk. Madame Yang did not know her and was shocked. She immediately hid behind Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong smiled at Madame Fong. My mother is timid and not used to interacting with strangers. Aunt Fong, you can tell me anything. Madame Fong could also tell that something was wrong with Madame Yang. She smiled and nodded. Gu Yundong took everything to her room and also brought a small bag of date cakes to Chen Yulan to thank her for her help today. She then said that she was a little tired and wanted to go back to her room to rest. Chen Yulan took the date cake and went to Madame Fang's house. As soon as she entered, her smile disappeared and her face darkened. To think that one was so busy. She didn't give us as much date cake as she gave Uncle and the others. Who is she looking down on? Isn't she bullying us orphans and widows? Madame Fong opened the date cake and ate it. All right, they still have to live with us for a long time in the future. There will always be benefits for us. Didn't you see that mother of hers? She's a fool. She even said that she's timid. Later, we'll coax that Madame Yang to find some food or other good things for us. I think they must have some family background. By the way, let's not cook tonight. When they cook, we'll say a few good words. She'll be too embarrassed not to invite us to eat. Will she? Why not? They're new here and don't even have any relatives or friends. They don't have any adult men at home either. Wouldn't they have to build a good relationship with our villagers? Besides, your uncle is the village chief. She has to please us. Chen Yulan nodded. Would Gu Yundong know that although she was just giving them some date cakes as a normal favor, those people were not satisfied at all and wanted more? They even planned to take her dinner. They didn't cook lunch. When they came from the county city in the morning, they bought a lot of buns and finished them at noon. Madame Yang and the two little ones made the bed and went to take an afternoon nap. Gu Yundong sat at the table, holding a charcoal pencil and paper, and began to draw the layout of the house. She had pictured modern houses in her mind, but here, many aspects were not easy to implement. She could only try to build them as comfortably and conveniently as possible. 1 room for each person, 2 guest rooms, and 2 study rooms. When the house was built and stabilized, she would definitely earn money and send Gu Yunshu to study. Gu Yunshu had learned some words from Gu Dajiang when he was at home. This child had inherited Gu Dajiang's talent. If he studied hard, he would definitely not be bad in the future. Chapter 51. Warmth. Gu Yundong wrote and drew on a piece of paper. According to her preliminary estimation, there would be 7 or 8 rooms. There was also a central room, kitchen, dining room, clean house, and warehouse. Oh right, there was also a cowshed. That was equivalent to a garage. Even if she could not afford a car now, she would have to need it in the future. The front door led to the courtyard. When the time came, they could plant grapes and dates in the courtyard, build a swing rack, and make a stone table and bench. In the summer, they could eat fruits at night, and in the winter, they could also bask in the sun. There was a row of central rooms opposite the courtyard. There was a bedroom and a study room on the left, and a dining room and a kitchen on the right. There were 2 rooms on both sides of the courtyard, which could be divided into 2 or 3 rooms. She planned to set a small cubicle in each room as a bathroom. It would be convenient to take a shower. Box novel. Kame warehouse could be built at the entrance. Agricultural tools were indispensable in the countryside. Those hoes and baskets could be placed there to build a public cleaning place. After painting and drawing, it actually covered about a mu of land. Indeed, it was necessary to buy another mu of land. The backyard had to be surrounded too. When the time came, they would cultivate all kinds of vegetables and have a place to raise pigs and chickens. The cowshed was also in the backyard. When the time came, they would open the door there. When there was an ox carriage, the ox carriage could be pulled out directly. After Gu Yundong drew the structure, she began to count the measurements. Madame Yang and the other 2 woke up on the bed. Gu Yunshu got up and washed his face. He walked to the table and picked up the draft paper. He tilted his head and looked around. Big sister, is this our home? Can you understand it? Gu Yundong looked up and asked him with a smile. The little thing's head was finally not disproportionately big. Now, even if he tilted his head, he did not have to worry about falling. She looked indescribably cute. After all, he was just a 5-year-old child. He looked good no matter how one looked at him. Gu Yunshu did not fully understand. He simply sat on the chair and studied the blueprint carefully. Gu Yunka saw it and ran over. The stool was a little high, so she could only climb her pants. I want to see it too. Little sister, be gentler. You're going to take off my pants. I'm so light. If you don't believe me, look. I'm so thin. I didn't eat much. Gu Yunka was dissatisfied. Her brother had been saying that she ate too much recently and that she would be a fat girl in the future. She didn't even want to like him anymore. Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. He carried Gu Yunka and sat beside Gu Yunshu. The little girl immediately turned her head and said to her, "Big sister, I'm light, right? You can even carry me." "Yes, yes, yes. You're the lightest among us." Gu Yunshu snorted. Of course she was the lightest. How heavy could a 3-year-old be? Gu Yong's little head had already leaned over. She could not understand it. She only saw square black lines and frames. She could not read, and she knew nothing about what was written on it. She raised her confused face and looked at Gu Yunshu. Gu Yunshu simply pondered as she explained to her. Seeing that he was right, Gu Yundong did not say anything and simply lowered his head to continue drawing. In addition to drawing the basic house pattern, there were also some details that had to be drawn clearly, lest it was unclear when the time came. Madame Yang was tidying up at the side. The atmosphere in the room was warm and calm. However, this warmth was broken after 2 hours. Just as Gu Yundong was engrossed in painting, Chen Yulan came to knock on the door. Chapter 52. Who takes advantage of whom? Sister Yundong. Her voice was still a little loud. Gu Yundong could not help but frown. He put down his pen in frustration and asked loudly, "What's the matter?" "It's getting late. My mother said that if you want to cook dinner, one should help you." "Yes, help her by telling her where to fetch the firewood and water." Gu Yundong looked at the sky. It was already 4 p.m. It was still too early for her. In addition, she had yet to finish painting. If it was any later, the sky would turn dark. Now that there were no electric lights, the oil lamp was too dark, so she had to finish it while the sky was still bright. Box novel. "Come hence," she said to Chen Yulan, who was at the door. "We ate late at noon. We're not hungry yet. You guys can cook first. We'll eat later. One still have something to do first." As she spoke, she looked at Gu Yunshu and the other woman. The 2 children patted their stomachs. "I'm still full." When Chen Yulan heard this, she pursed her lips and left. Madame Fong was watering the vegetables in the courtyard. Seeing her come out angrily, she could not help but ask, "What happened?" "She said she's not hungry yet." Chen Yulan snorted. "They must have eaten buns at noon. I smelled it when I walked past their window. They must have eaten a lot of buns since they were so full. They don't even know how to share the buns with the 2 of us. They really don't know how to be human." As she spoke, she raised her head and asked Madame Fong, "Do you think she's thinking of taking advantage of us so she won't cook? Shall let the 2 children come over to beg when we eat?" Madame Fang's eyes flashed. "Now that you mention it, it makes sense. They fled here. One heard that those refugees have nothing to eat on the way. Even if they have money, they have nowhere to use it. They only ask others for food. Perhaps they all have the habit of using 2 children to take advantage. So what do we do? Let's wait. I want to see whole starve first. They have children. Yes, if they ask us for a few dishes, well, let them pay. The price will be high. They have money." Gu Yundong did not know that although she was just a little late for dinner, the mother and daughter could come up with a scheme. She was already at the finishing stage and drew for another hour. When the sky darkened and Madame Yang lit an oil lamp, she stopped. She exhaled and rubbed her shoulders. She packed up the sketches and put them away before saying to them, "It's getting late. We didn't bring much food. There are still dumplings that we made at Auntie Kes' house yesterday morning. How about we eat dumplings tonight?" The dumplings had already been steamed, and the weather was relatively cool now. They would not turn bad even if they were kept for 2 days. Moreover, she had been hiding the dumplings in her space to preserve the freshness. Actually, Madame Yang could cook. It was just that they had just arrived in an unfamiliar place. The mother and daughter were not as straightforward as Aunt Ku. Madame Yang would panic, so Gu Yundong did not let her out for the time being. When they heard that they were going to eat dumplings, the 3 of them could not help but swallow their saliva. Although they had already eaten dumplings twice at Aunt Kes' house, they still wanted to eat them. "I want to eat 2 bowls," Gu Yunka said. Gu Yundong took the dumplings and went out. Madame Yang helped her start the fire. When they entered the kitchen, Gu Yundong looked at the cold environment and could not help but raise her eyebrows. Madame Fong and the rest had not cooked dinner? At this moment, Chen Yulan had already run into Madame Fang's house. She said excitedly to her mother, who was filling her stomach with date cake, They finally can't take it anymore and started to cook dinner. Chapter 53. Who's tolerating your bad habit? Excitement flashed across Madame Fang's face. She pushed Chen Yulan. Go and help. At that time, the Gu family would be embarrassed, right? Wouldn't they have to let the mother and daughter eat together? Chen Yulan turned around and ran to the kitchen. She wanted to tell the Gu family where the water was, but she didn't expect them to have already boiled it. Looking at the dumplings on the side, Chen Yulan's face turned red. Dumplings, white flour dumplings. They were fair and plump and full of fillings. Just looking at them made one drool. Box novel. Calm, she forcefully retracted her gaze and said enthusiastically, Sister Yundong, are you making dinner? Let me help you start the fire. There's no need. My mother is here. I'll be fine in a while. Go do what you have to do. Seeing that the water was boiling, Gu Yundong added oil, salt, and scallions to the big ceramic bowl to adjust the taste. Then, she poured boiling water on it. The bowl instantly became oily. Chen Yulan's hands were clenched tightly. Instead of leaving, she took a few steps forward and said with a smile, Are you eating dumplings? Why didn't I see when you guys made dumplings? They smell so good. Mother and I had some porridge earlier. Now, we're hungry after smelling your dumplings. Had some porridge earlier? Then why was the pot and stove cold when she came in? It didn't look like they had just eaten at all. Gu Yundong was not a fool that could not even tell what she was saying. In addition, her eyeballs were about to fall into the dumpling pot, and she had come to help at the right time. She wanted to eat their dumplings. If you want to eat, just eat. You even spoke indirectly. She was not an unreasonable person, but at the very least, this woman had to tell the truth. She said that she was hungry after eating porridge earlier. Could it be that she had been waiting for them to cook until she came to eat? Who would tolerate your bad habit? I don't expect you to be like Auntie Ku, but at least let's get along like a normal landlord and tenant. I've paid the room fee and doesn't owe you anything. Gu Yundong smiled as she watched the fat dumplings in the pot float up one by one. She immediately became even happier. Yes, we're going to eat dumplings. It's already so late. I thought it would be troublesome to cook, right? As she spoke, she scooped all the dumplings into a large bowl that had been mixed with ingredients. She had bought this bowl in the prefectural city. It was very big, just like the bowl of fish with pickled vegetables in the restaurant in her previous life. Now that the dumplings were all scooped up, Gu Yundong said to Chen Yulan, I'm done. The kitchen is yours. We'll go back to our room to eat so as not to disturb you. It's still early. If you're hungry, you can cook some noodles. It'll be convenient and not waste time. She placed a piece of cloth on the edge of the bowl and carried it away. From afar she said, Mother, put out the fire and clean the pot. Hurry back to your room to eat dumplings. There aren't many dumplings. My brother and sister might finish them later. I'll be done soon. Madame Yang was very fast. After washing the pot, she followed her into the room. The smell of dumplings still lingered in the kitchen, but Chen Yulan stood in front of the dark stove with a livid expression. When Madame Fong came in, she happened to hear her kick the foot of the table hard. It was so painful that she cried out. What are you doing? What's going on? Chen Yulan felt extremely aggrieved. To think that she had helped this woman run around the homestead and treated her so well. She had even kindly told her to stay away from Shao Qingyuan and not to offend anyone in the village who was a chatterbox. In the end, this Gu Yundong was an ingrate with no conscience. Chapter 54. Feng Danning. Mother, let them leave tomorrow. We won't let them stay in our house anymore. Madame Fong patted her. What nonsense are you talking about? We've already accepted the money. How can you not let him stay? If you really chase him away, it'll be difficult to explain to your uncle. But she doesn't know what's good for her. Chen Yulan recounted what had happened just now. She was very irritable, especially when she felt the smell of dumplings floating in her nose. She couldn't help but take a deep breath. Madame Fong frowned. Forget it, forget it. She doesn't know what's good for her. Isn't there still that pair of young siblings and that fool mother? Those three don't know anything. They'll definitely be easy to fool. Another day, when that girl isn't around, Say a few good words. Are you afraid that they won't give us anything good? Alright, let's cook first. We'll find an opportunity tomorrow. I'm starving. Mother, didn't you just eat date cake? Box novel. Chen Yulan muttered twice, but she still got to work. Gu Yundong happily distributed the dumplings and said in a low voice, that mother and daughter are not easy to get along with. Stay away from them in the future, understand? I know. Gu Yunshu nodded repeatedly as he ate. I'm a man. It's not good for me to be too close to them. Gu Yunka saw that his brother had already eaten a few and was instantly extremely anxious. However, he remembered to answer his eldest sister's question and hurriedly nodded. I'll be obedient and stay away. Older brother. Eat slowly. Help me blow on it first. Madame Yang nodded. In the future, when I see them, I'll run. I'll run immediately. Dong Dong, you don't have to worry. After saying that, she immediately lowered her head and the three of them began to eat assiduously. The dumplings that big sister made were the best. They tasted delicious. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Take your time. There's enough. The family of four did not treat Madame Fong and her daughter the same as Aunt Ku. After eating, they boiled water, washed up, and went to bed. The next morning, Gu Yundong took the blueprint and brought Madame Yang and the other two to the village chief's house. Before he left, he locked the door. Chen Liang was already waiting for her. Beside him stood a tall and burly middle-aged man. As soon as Gu Yundong entered, he introduced, Yundong, you're here. Come, let me introduce you. This is Feng Danning from our village. Your Uncle Feng. Hello, Uncle Feng. Feng Danning nodded and looked at this family of four. He understood why the village chief said that he would be in charge of this matter. It was indeed inconvenient without an adult man in this family. The house they built would not be very big. However, each person would earn 40 copper coins a day. Could they afford it? Chen Liang patted Feng Danning's arm and said, Your Uncle Feng is an expert in building houses in our area. As long as he's not busy with farming, he will work near us to help people build houses. When he was young, he even stayed in the prefectural city for 2 years. His skills are unparalleled. Uncle Chen's help is naturally the best. I'm not worried. Ha ha ha. Chen Liang liked Gu Yundong's words. She was nice. She was not like the girls and women in the village. Not only were they loud, but they also made people's ears hurt. All right, didn't you say yesterday that you would go back and think about how to build a house? Think about it. Then tell your Uncle Feng about it. I've already drawn the blueprint. Uncle Feng, take a look. Gu Yundong unfolded the blueprint in her hand. Feng Danning and Chen Liang were a little surprised and came over to take a look. Chapter 55. Seeing a ghost the next moment, both of them widened their eyes in surprise. This was a blueprint? It was as if a house was clearly displayed in front of them. It was obvious at a glance. Madame Zhou also took a closer look. Even a layman like her felt that this house was really beautiful. Gu Yundong took out 2 more blueprints. The first one was a diagram of the entire house, just like the modern house from a high perspective. The second one was an internal structural diagram with various sizes and the location of the room. The third one was the details of the interior of the room. After looking at the 3 blueprints, both Feng Danning and Chen Liang could not help but swallow hard. Box novel. Yundong, this was drawn by you? Chen Liang found it unbelievable. You've studied? You know how to write? There were many words written on it. Gu Yundong nodded. My father can read and write. He taught me. In fact, these 3 drawings were very crude. The main reason was that her time was limited. What exquisite thing could she hand over in just 1 afternoon? But this was enough. What she wanted to build was not a pavilion or a palace temple. It was just a brick house of a farmer. But even so, Feng Danning couldn't help but look at it again and again. He had been building houses for so many years and had always been dictated or explained to by the hirer. How could there be such a detailed blueprint that gave such a clear and intuitive image? When he was in the prefectural city, he had seen a large stack of drawings when a rich family was building a house. However, he felt that it was different from what he was seeing now. In short, Feng Danning felt that after reading Gu Yundong's blueprint, his mind would immediately picture the appearance of the house. It was too convenient. Uncle Feng, this blueprint only has a rough structure. There are many details that one need Uncle Feng to tell me. If there's anything one need, I'll add it. Alright, come, let's talk about it in detail. Hey, how did you draw this? This door is really beautiful, and the windows are also beautiful. It's quite interesting to have flowers on both sides of the door. The flowers are also lifelike, and what does this semicircle mean? Gu Yundong was speechless. Just as she was holding her forehead, she saw a 6 or 7-year-old child walk in and quietly approach Gu Yunshu. All Shu, 111 bring you out to play. This was the village chief's grandson, Niu Dan. His real name was Chen Jingguan. He had already met Gu Yunshu yesterday. When Gu Yundong went to visit the homestead, the two children were chatting quite happily. Gu Yundong thought that she would be very busy from now on. The two children would also be very bored by her side, so she nodded and let Gu Yunshu go. She only reminded him to take good care of Gu Yunka. Unexpectedly, the little girl shook her head firmly with her arms crossed. I want talk to older brother today. Who asked older brother to call her fat girl this morning? Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. Niu Dan dragged Gu Yunshu away. As soon as he went out, Gu Yunshu asked Niu Dan to bring him to the homestead at the foot of the mountain to take a look. He did not have time to look at it yesterday. Niu Dan familiarly led him to the place. In the future, if your family is here, it will be easy to go up the mountain. Let me tell you, there are rabbits and pheasants on our mountain. Last time, my brother caught 2 pheasants and roasted them. Unfortunately, I couldn't catch them. My sister is very powerful. She will definitely be able to catch them. Then the next time your eldest sister catches them, I'll go to your house to eat. Okay. Hey, isn't this the young master from yesterday? Just as the two of them were fantasizing about the future, they heard a discordant voice behind them. They turned around and saw 4 or 5 children in their teens standing behind them. One of them pointed at Gu Yunshu and said, Hey, you have candy on you, right? Take it out for us to eat. Hurry up. Was this person a bandit? Big Sister had said that one had to be as cold and heartless as the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves when dealing with bandits. Gu Yunshu pulled a long face, but before he could be heartless, the 4 or 5 children suddenly stared behind him with expressions as if they had seen a ghost. Chapter 56. Never thought of helping you. Gu Yunshu turned around in confusion and saw a young man standing behind them with a gloomy expression. His eyes were cold, as if they had disturbed his rest. However, this person seemed to have been seen somewhere before. He poked his head hard, but before he could figure it out, the children suddenly screamed, Wolf cub run! As soon as he said this, everyone dispersed. Gu Yunshu was still standing on the spot, not understanding what the wolf cub meant. Niu Dan beside him was a little afraid, but Gu Yunshu was brought out by him. He could not leave him alone, so he was very strong and did not move his legs. Box novel. Calm, however, he secretly tugged at his hand and whispered, Let's leave quickly too. Why? Gu Yunshu was puzzled. Isn't it good that they were scared away? Then they won't snatch my things. But I'm also scared. Niu Dan quietly raised his head to look at Shao Qingyuan's face. When he met his eyes, his body could not help but tremble. Gu Yunshu had already remembered who he was. He immediately walked quickly to Shao Qingyuan. It's you. Why are you here? Are you also from this village? What a coincidence. I'll also be a villager in the future. This is the homestead we just confirmed. Eldest sister said that we can build a house soon. This will be my home in the future. Where is your home? Was it too late for him to pretend not to know him and run with the children just now? Shao Qingyuan looked at the little kid in front of him. What's your name? Niu Dan stood rooted to the ground and did not dare to move. However, he was shouting crazily in his heart. Don't answer, don't answer. If you answer, it means that you're targeted by him. You're finished. I'm telling you that you're finished. And yet, my name is Gu Yunshu, Gu Yunshu said very seriously. Thank you for helping us scare away those child bandits just now. Shao Qingyuan sneered. One never thought of helping you. It was just a coincidence. Although you might not have thought about it, it was indeed because of you that they ran away and didn't find trouble with me. One was the one who benefited. My eldest sister said that this is considered, well, indirect help. Indirect help? Shao Qingyuan was deep in thought. Last time in the prefecture capital, the two constables had also seen the girl, so they did not cause trouble for him. It was especially similar to the current situation. Shao Qingyuan did not say anything else and turned to leave. Gu Yunshu still wanted to follow him and chat with him. He had just taken a step when he was pulled back by Niu Dan. He called out to him softly and firmly, "Come back." Gu Yunshu was only a little slower, but Shao Qingyuan had already turned the intersection in large strides and disappeared. Gu Yunshu was very regretful. "Why are you holding me back? I haven't finished speaking." "You know him." Speaking of this, Gu Yunshu was a little excited. "You don't know. Last time, I saw him kick out like this." He directly knocked over a constable. Hiss! Niu Dan sucked in a cold breath. He actually dared to hit the constable? As expected, a wolf cub is indeed a wolf cub. A wolf cub? Why do you all call him a wolf cub? And you all look very afraid of him. Isn't he quite handsome? Could it be that these people had a problem with their aesthetic taste as eldest sister had said? Then what should he do? He thought that he was quite handsome. Would the people here think that he was ugly? Chapter 57. Shao Qingyuan teaches the brats a lesson. Gu Yunshu touched his little face. Niu Dan had already pulled him back. As he walked, he explained to him. In the beginning, the adults called him a wolf cub. I don't understand why. I asked my mother and grandmother, but they just told me not to ask. Speaking of this, he was a little dissatisfied. Everyone treated him as a brat. He was already 7 years old, okay? I'm afraid of him because... Speaking of this, Niu Dan couldn't help but shiver. Once, I saw him with my own eyes. I saw him throw Go Dan into the water. All. Gu Yunshu was stunned. Who is Go Dan? Was that the main point? That was obviously not the case. Box novel. Calm Niu Dan was a little resentful, but with his interruption, the fear in his heart decreased a lot. Go Dan is the son of the Gao family at the village entrance. He's the same age as me. Once, he scolded the wolf cub and asked the big dog at home to bite him. He said that he would let the wolf cub compete with the dog to see who was stronger. In the end, the big dog was injured by a kick and Go Dan was thrown into the river. When Go Dan couldn't breathe, this guy went down to save him. When Go Dan recovered, he threw him into the water and waited for Go Dan family to come. He had seen it with his own eyes. Go Dan went home later and fell seriously ill. From then on, he avoided Shao Qingyuan and did not dare to provoke him anymore. The news spread like wildfire. The Gao family refused to let Shao Qingyuan off just like that. They even came to his grandfather to seek justice for them and chase Shao Qingyuan out of Yongfu village. Later on, Shao Qingyuan said that if they dared to cause trouble for him again, he would set the Gao family on fire. Shao Qingyuan had always been a man of his word. The Gao family was also afraid that he would really do something. After all, he had nothing to worry about. There was no need for him to sacrifice the lives of his entire family. In short, this matter was left unsettled in the end. However, from then on, whenever children saw Shao Qingyuan, they would run as far as they could. Don't you think this person is scary? Niu Dan said to Gu Yunshu. In the future, you have to walk further away when you see him. He won't even let a child off. Gu Yunshu was conflicted. Wasn't it Go Dan who did bad things first? It's normal for him to be taught a lesson. My elder sister said that no matter if it's an old man or a child, if their hearts are bad, they're bad people. Why can't you hit them? What if that Go Dan lets the dog bite you? Niu Dan blinked. I must be very angry and want revenge. In that case, the wolf cubs were not wrong? Why did it feel strange? Before he could figure it out, the two of them had already walked to the door of the house. When they entered the central room, they could still hear Feng Daning's excited voice. They had yet to finish the discussion. Gu Yunshu walked to his sister's side and stood on his tiptoes to take a look. He realized that they were talking about the last picture. It seemed like it was about time. Feng Danning was full of praise for these blueprints. With this, I know what to do. You've also added what I just said that needed your attention just now. Don't worry, I've already taken a look. Tomorrow will be a good day. We'll be able to start work on the house soon. It'll be completed in a month. Ha ha ha, the people one called are all very efficient. Anyway, you live in the village now and can look at it at any time. If you have any questions, just tell me. Thank you, Uncle Feng. Feng Danning waved his hand. It's no trouble at all. Anyway, you're paying me. Besides, there's this blueprint. He suddenly paused and his expression became strange. Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Is there anything else? Chapter 58. Let me say the ugly things first. Feng Danning coughed lightly and looked a little embarrassed. He said in a low voice, I was too happy just now and didn't pay attention. I didn't consider your situation. Your house is good, but it will cost a lot of money to build. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment before he smiled. No. You can build it first. You don't have to worry about money. In the countryside, a family of 4 or 5 would usually only need more than 20 taels of silver to build a slightly better house. But Gu Yundong wanted a green brick tiled house, and there were many requirements. The renovation alone was different from the village chief's green brick tiled house. The labor fee was not low, and the area was quite large, so it could not be built without 70 to 80 taels. Gu Yundong's budget was 100 taels. Even if she did not have it now, it would take at least a month to build a house. During this period of time, she could always think of a way to earn some money. Box novel. If she really could not earn it, she could postpone buying the furniture inside and lay the bricks on the ground later. At the moment, she still had more than 60 taels of silver on hand, which was enough. Hearing her say this, Feng Danning was relieved. It seemed that the Gu family was indeed wealthy. Otherwise, her father would not have been able to read, right? Gu Yundong discussed the ingredients with Feng Danning again. Madame Zhou had already called them for lunch. Madame Zhou had brought Madame Yang along with her to cook. Yesterday, Gu Yundong had given Chen Liang silver so that Madame Zhou had a good impression of her. It did not cost much to have a meal. Besides, they had not finished talking. After eating, she gave Gu Yundong a big basket of vegetables to bring back. Poor Madame Feng and her daughter. They were still waiting for Gu Yundong to go home and buy the vegetables in their field. Gu Yundong looked at the basket that was enough for her family to eat for 2 days. He raised his eyebrows and smiled at Madame Zhou. Aunt, are you afraid that I won't have any vegetables to eat? Madame Zhou was stunned and immediately felt a little awkward. I was just afraid that you've just arrived and didn't prepare anything. You don't have a vegetable field. These were all planted by my family. There's a lot of them. It's not troublesome. Gu Yundong accepted the vegetables. Chen Liang and his wife were not bad. However, there were some things that had to be made clear. I know even if Auntie doesn't say it. You're afraid that Auntie Feng and I will have a problem, right? Madame Zhou was a little surprised. It had only been a night, but the Gu family already knew what kind of person Madame Feng was. Let me tell you the truth. It hasn't been easy for second brother's wife to raise their daughter alone all these years. They've suffered a lot, so it's inevitable that they're a little stubborn. It's not a big problem. After all, your Uncle Chen is a man. It's not easy for him to get too close to the sister-in-law, and he doesn't know what she's like now. Back then, when he arranged for your family to live there, it was because there was really no other suitable family. Secondly, he wanted to take care of the mother and daughter and let them earn a few copper coins. Gu Yundong nodded. No, but I'll make it clear to Auntie first. If others treat me well, I'll return the favor, but if they scheme against me, one won't be polite either. After saying that, she nodded at Madame Zhou and turned to leave with the basket. Madame Zhou sighed. She had thought that Gu Yundong was easy to talk to, but now it seemed that she was not someone who could be taken advantage of. Everything else was fine, but she was afraid that if the two of them really fought, it would be her man who would be in a difficult position. Madame Zhou shook her head and went back to tell Chen Liang this. It could be considered a warning in advance. On the other side, when Gu Yundong brought the 3 of them home, she was surprised to see a man standing in the courtyard. When the man saw them, He was only stunned for a moment before nodding in greeting. Chapter 59. Source of income. At this moment, Madame Fong walked out. Behind her was another woman. That woman looked a little similar to the man in front of her. Madame Fong was quite unhappy to see Gu Yundong, especially when she saw that she was carrying a basket of vegetables. She frowned. However, there was still a guest at home. She still had a smile on her face and introduced, "This is the Gu family that I told you about, who are staying at my house for the time being. They don't have any adult men, so it's convenient for them to stay at our house. Our Yulan doesn't have any siblings either. It's rare for her to have a few kids at home. She's so happy. She said that as an elder sister, she has to take good care of them." Gu Yundong sneered and did not say anything. Madame Fong then said to her, "This is Auntie Wu from town." That's Auntie Wu's youngest son. He just got engaged to our Yulan. When she mentioned town, Madame Fang's face was filled with a sense of superiority. Gu Yundong greeted Aunt Wu and returned to her room. Auntie Wu frowned. "Why is she so rude?" Sigh. Madame Fong sighed. She fled here and met many bad people along the way. It's inevitable that she'll be wary of strangers. Let's not talk about her. Stay here for dinner. I'll get Yulan to cut a piece of meat. That's good. I've never tasted Yulan's cooking before. Madame Fong called Chen Yulan out of the house. Gu Yundong could still hear their voices from afar. She frowned slightly. Indeed, it was very inconvenient to stay in someone else's house. She had to earn money quickly. After that, she would get Uncle Fong to hire more people and speed up. However, what should she do? The most basic thing in the countryside was still farming. When they came to Yongfu village, they could get 2 mu's of wasteland, but they had to cultivate it themselves. Even if Gu Yundong was an expert in farming, it was impossible for her to earn money in a month. Then there was only... Gu Yundong turned his head and looked in the direction of the 9 Tigers Mountain. As the saying went, one had to rely on whatever they had. Yongfu village was at the foot of the 9 Tigers Mountain. It was said that the 9 Tigers Mountain was endless, and all kinds of ferocious beasts lived in the depths of the mountains. Even the most skilled hunters in the vicinity did not dare to enter. Gu Yundong felt that she should go to the 9 Tigers Mountain to find an opportunity. After setting her goal, she was temporarily at ease. Later, Chen Yulan knocked on their door and whispered that she was good at cooking. She wanted her to secretly cook dinner for the Wu family. Gu Yundong refused without even finding a reason. The next morning, she carried a basket on her back and headed for the 9 Tigers Mountain. At the foot of the mountain, many children were picking firewood and digging wild vegetables. Further in, they could see some women looking for mushrooms. Gu Yundong had also wanted to find some mushrooms. Seeing this, she could only continue walking in. Then she saw a pheasant. Gu Yundong chuckled. "My luck is not bad. This pheasant is quite fat." She took out the crossbow that she had placed in the basket on her back and aimed it at the pheasant. She had fought with mutated animals during the apocalypse, so it was not a big deal to hunt a pheasant. She threw the pheasant into the basket and continued walking in. When she saw a rabbit again, Gu Yundong was 100 times more confident that he would be able to gather enough money to build a house in a month. However, when she picked up the crossbow and aimed it at the rabbit again, her body suddenly trembled, as if something terrifying was staring at her back. The hair on her body stood on end. She stopped in her tracks and spun around. She aimed the crossbow bolt at the tree behind her and pulled the trigger. Chapter 60. Targeted by Shao Qingyuan. However, in the next moment, her eyes widened. The arrow suddenly turned in another direction, and with a swish, the arrowhead finally nailed into another tree. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and looked up at the man squatting on the tree. "What are you doing here?" If she hadn't reacted quickly, the arrow would have pierced through his head. "Why didn't you say anything? I almost injured you by accident." Shao Qingyuan's gaze landed on the crossbow in her hand. He quickly retracted his gaze and looked at the girl's face again. He did not say anything. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and said, "Yesterday, my brother came back and said that you saved him and did not let anyone bully him." "Thank you." Shao Qingyuan still did not speak. He squatted on the tree and did not move. This time, Gu Yundong finally understood why people called him a wolf cub. This person looked at people like a wolf with a glint in his eyes. It was as if in his eyes, you were prey with nowhere to run. He did not speak, and Gu Yundong would not ask for a rebuff. She nodded and continued walking. After that delay just now, the rabbit had already disappeared. Only when Gu Yundong's figure gradually disappeared into the distance did Shao Qingyuan jump down from the tree. Gu Yundong was not very familiar with the Nine Tigers Mountain and did not have much hunting experience. After the apocalypse, animals had all mutated, so their habits and footprints were naturally different. Moreover, fighting mutated animals was basically a teamwork, and others were responsible for determining the direction. Therefore, she could not rely on the traces of animals on the road to determine which side had prey. She could only rely on her senses. However, after walking for a while, she felt a rustling sound behind her, as if someone was following her. As expected, when she turned around, she saw Shao Qingyuan walking over. Gu Yundong stood still and asked him, "Are you going up the mountain for hunting too? If you're going this way, I'll change my route." Seeing that he was silent, Gu Yundong took it as a tacit agreement and turned to walk to the other side. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, Shao Qingyuan's voice came from behind. "There's a wild boar cave not far ahead." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Wild boar. That was a big one. She would definitely earn a lot of silver if she sold it. Wait, a wild boar cave. There should be more than a wild boar inside. Her small arms and legs were not good enough. Moreover, she was not familiar with the terrain and was not confident. It was a little regretful, but Gu Yundong still turned her head and said to Shao Qingyuan, "So you're here to tell me that there's danger over there?" "Thank you." This person was not like the wolf cub that others said. Look, he helped her brother yesterday and came to warn her today. Wasn't that quite a heartwarming action? It was probably because he didn't speak much that people misunderstood. No. Shao Qingyuan looked at her steadily. "I can't handle it alone. I want to work with you. The crossbow in your hand is quite useful. It should be able to help." Gu Yundong almost choked on her own saliva. So she was the one who had misunderstood. "I have a way to sell wild boars." "Well, split the money," Shao Qingyuan said. Gu Yundong was very tempted. Wild boars seemed to be able to seduce people. They swayed in front of her, making her lose interest in small shrimps like pheasants in the basket. She pursed her lips and lowered her head to think about it. Shao Qingyuan looked at the top of her head and smiled faintly. Chapter 61. Gu Yundong's impression. After a while, Gu Yundong gritted her teeth and said, "There's no problem with cooperation, but how confident are you?" "There are a few wild boars in the wild boar cave." "I'm 100% sure." "3 boars. In that case, let's go. Lead the way." Gu Yundong was eager to give it a try. There were 3 wild boars. She would earn a lot of money if she sold them. Shao Qingyuan nodded and walked forward. Gu Yundong followed behind at a moderate distance. With Shao Qingyuan leading the way and cutting down the weeds along the way, Gu Yundong walked exceptionally smoothly. Moreover, Shao Qingyuan did not walk fast. He maintained a certain distance from her. In fact, this person was quite careful. After walking for a while, just as Gu Yundong thought that the two of them would reach their destination in silence, Shao Qingyuan suddenly stopped. When she approached, he pursed his lips slightly and asked, "Aren't you afraid of me?" Gu Yundong was stunned. "Why should one be afraid of you? You should have heard the rumors in the village." She still spoke to him even after hearing the rumors. There was no fear in her eyes, nor did she tell her brother to stay away from him. She even dared to enter the mountains alone to hunt wild boars with him. She was even bolder than he had imagined. Gu Yundong suddenly understood. "You mean everyone says that you're an ungrateful wolf cub?" She felt that he was indeed a wolf cub. As for not being grateful, that was debatable. Actually, Gu Yundong did not quite believe it. Shao Qingyuan was speechless. She dared to be so straightforward in front of him. Wasn't she afraid that he would be angry and attack her? This was a mountain where there was not even a ghost. Gu Yundong walked forward slowly. Sigh, she still hoped that he could walk in front of him. It was too convenient for someone to open a path for her. However, he had the intention to chat, so she couldn't rush him. It was better to answer quickly so that she could follow behind. I heard it from others. Perhaps one met you earlier than I heard the rumors and had some preconceived impressions. Shao Qingyuan was stunned. What impressions? He was inexplicably nervous when he asked this question. You repay kindness with kindness, and grudge with grudge. He was very similar to her, so Gu Yundong naturally had a good impression of him. Hadn't she once been thought to be cold, unreasonable, and unlikable? Was she even a jinx? Shao Qingyuan suddenly stopped in his tracks. Repay kindness with kindness? It turned out that she had such a high evaluation of him. Back then, when they first met, he had been hitting people. Not to mention the time when he dealt with shopkeeper Pan, he had kicked the constable without a word. When ordinary women saw him, they would probably think that this kind of person did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He was no different from a hooligan who was unruly. She should not have a good impression of him. Why did you stop? Gu Yundong took a few steps forward and happened to see a fork in the road. She did not know which way to go. She turned around and saw that he was still standing there. Shao Qingyuan raised his head and looked at her deeply before striding over. Left. Gu Yundong took the opportunity to say, It's better if you lead the way. I'm not familiar with this place. She finally found an opportunity to follow behind. Shao Qingyuan lowered his head slightly. All right. Gu Yundong did not see it. There seemed to be a sparkle in his lowered eyes. Chapter 62. Is there really a third boar? This time, Shao Qingyuan's movements were even more agile. The two of them walked for nearly half an hour before they finally saw the wild boar cave. Shao Qingyuan stopped Gu Yundong, who was about to move forward. Hide on that tree. You have a crossbow in your hand, which is suitable for long-range shooting. I'll lure the wild boars out later. I'll deal with the first two. You just have to keep an eye on the third one. You're dealing with two? Isn't that too dangerous? No, I know what to do, Shao Qingyuan said. He frowned slightly and said worriedly, Be careful. Gu Yundong nodded, turned around, and climbed up the tree. Shao Qingyuan looked up and saw that she had covered her figure with leaves. This tree trunk was thick enough and was not dangerous. He turned around and walked towards the wild boar cave. Gu Yundong watched as he skillfully approached the wild boar cave. Along the way, he squatted down. She did not know what trap he had set on the ground. Shao Qingyuan had used smoke to chase the wild boars out of the cave. As soon as the wild boars came out, he jumped up the tree. Gu Yundong watched attentively and ran out. Whoa, it was quite big. It weighed about 400 catties. The second one also ran out. It was slightly smaller than the previous one, but it should be more than 300 catties. Gu Yundong had been waiting for the third one, but no matter how she waited, it did not come out. On the other side, Shao Qingyuan waited until the first wild boar stepped into the noose he had set on the ground. Then, he suddenly pulled and jumped down from the tree. The wild boar's front hooves were raised a few centimeters, as if half of its body was standing up, leaving only its two hooves on the ground. It began to struggle crazily, but the rope was firmly tied to the tree. Shao Qingyuan came over without stopping and stabbed the dagger into its neck. Roar! The wild boar cried out in pain as blood gushed out of its body. It glared angrily at Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan immediately took a big step back, but at this moment, another wild boar ran towards him. Shao Qingyuan was agile. He took a large piece of wood on the ground and smashed it on its head. The wild boar fainted for a moment and instantly became even more irritable and furious. It roared and rushed at him. Shao Qingyuan dodged left and right. The wild boar knocked down 2 trees in a row. Gu Yundong, who was hiding in the tree, could not wait for the third wild boar. She decisively adjusted the direction of the arrow and aimed it at the charging wild boar. However, it was fast. In addition, Shao Qingyuan would approach the wild boar from time to time to attack it, making it difficult to aim. Gu Yundong frowned, but Shao Qingyuan suddenly turned around and ran. The wild boar also chased after him. Gu Yundong was speechless. The man and the pig disappeared. Gu Yundong's gaze finally focused on the wild boar whose leg was still tied by a rope. It was still struggling crazily. However, it had been stabbed by Shao Qingyuan previously and was bleeding a lot now. It gradually lost its strength. Gu Yundong aimed her crossbow at it and shot it in the neck. The wild boar flailed twice more and finally fell to the ground weakly. Gu Yundong slid down from the tree and chased after Shao Qingyuan uneasily. Halfway through the chase, she saw Shao Qingyuan running back. There was no sign of the wild boar behind him. His body was stained with blood. It was unknown if it was his or the wild boar's. "Are you hurt?" Shao Qingyuan shook his head. "No, that wild boar is already dead. I'll go back and deal with the first one." "There's no need. I shot another arrow and it stopped moving. But I haven't seen a third wild boar. Are there really 3? Gu Yundong asked suspiciously. Chapter 63. She's very sharp. Shao Qingyuan nodded affirmatively. "There are 3 of them. One of them might not be in the wild boar cave. Let's get these 2 down the mountain first, lest the smell of blood attracts other wild beasts." She was really sharp. Yes, hurry up." Gu Yundong could not be bothered to ask anything else and immediately followed him back to the entrance of the wild boar cave. Shao Qingyuan dragged out a raft from the grass. The first wild boar weighed more than 200 kilograms. Gu Yundong was quite strong now, but she was certain that she could not withstand half the weight of the wild boar. It was a pity that she had Shao Qingyuan by her side. Otherwise, she could have easily put the wild boar into her spatial storage. Shao Qingyuan was strong. Gu Yundong helped him. He forced the wild boar onto the raft and dragged it down the mountain. The other wild boar was a little further away. It was not easy to place it on the raft, so he could only pull this one to the foot of the mountain first. Shao Qingyuan was very familiar with this place. He returned much faster than when he came. When he reached the foot of the mountain, he found a place where no one passed by. He asked Gu Yundong to guard the dead boar here while he dragged the other one. When Shao Qingyuan brought the wild boar over again, his body was drenched in sweat. He wiped it casually and said to Gu Yundong, "If such big wild boars are sent to town, we can only sell one at most. The price will be higher if we send it to the county. Are you going?" Gu Yundong looked at the 2 wild boars. It was all right to go to town, but it would take too much time to go to the county. She still could not let go of the 3 children at home. With this round trip and the time spent selling wild boars, she would probably be back at night. Moreover, to be honest, these 2 wild boars were killed by Shao Qingyuan. She felt a little guilty about taking the money from selling the wild boars. That was not right. She had at least helped him drag the raft and guard the wild boar, right? That was hard work. How could she push the hard work money away? After some thought, she handed the pheasant in the basket to Shao Qingyuan. "I want go to the county. Help me sell this pheasant." "Okay." Shao Qingyuan did not say anything else. He took the pheasant and let Gu Yundong go back first. Gu Yundong was still a little worried. How was he going to send these 2 wild boars to the county? Her space was useless. She was so tired. Gu Yundong sighed and returned home. Only then did he realize that Madame Fong and her daughter were not around. Gu Yunshu said, "Auntie Fang's nephew is getting married." They went to the wedding banquet. Auntie Fong also said that she would only be back in 2 days. She asked us to help feed the chickens and pigs. Aunt Fong raised 3 chickens and a pig. She usually caught worms to feed the chickens and went to pick pig grass. Oh, this was acting first and reporting later. Gu Yundong sneered. "Yunshu, go to the village chief's house and tell Aunt Zhou." Hee, I've already spoken to her," Gu Yunshu said smugly. Actually, if Aunt Fong had said it nicely, he would not have minded helping. In the past, when he was in the Gu family, he had often gone out to gather pig grass. He could do these things. However, Auntie Fang's words made people dislike her. It was as if she was not asking them for help at all, but ordering them. Under Gu Yundong's influence during this period of time, Gu Yunshu would not give in to such people. Gu Yundong patted his head in satisfaction. She turned around and saw that Aunt Fong and Chen Yulan had locked the door. The kitchen utensils were all sealed. Even the eggs in the urn had been moved away. She could not help but sneer. They were guarding against them like thieves, but they actually wanted their help? Dream on. However, since the mother and daughter were not around, Gu Yundong made a sumptuous dinner. Anyway, there was meat in her spatial storage. The sky had just turned dark when Shao Qingyuan came over. Chapter 64. 80 Taels of Silver. Gu Yundong went up to him expectantly. Did you sell them all? The two of them stood at the kitchen door. There was a shadow under the roof. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see the two of them standing here. Shao Qingyuan took out silver ingots. The 2 wild boars were sold for a total of 80 taels of silver. The price of the county's domestic pigs is 18 copper coins a catty. The wild boar is much more expensive, 80 copper coins. The smaller wild boar is 330 catties. I sold it to the restaurant. The shopkeeper knows me there. Including the pheasant, I asked for 30 taels of silver. The big one was fancied by a rich young master. He was generous and directly gave me 50 taels of silver. A total of 80 taels. Here is the 40 taels you deserve. Take it. Gu Yundong knew that wild boars were expensive, but she did not expect to earn 40 taels in one go. No. Wasn't it inappropriate to take 40 taels of silver from him? She stared at the silver ingot and tried her best to restrain herself. She said very politely, "You were the one who killed the 2 wild boars. I just helped. Besides, you were the one who paid the villagers to pull the wild boars to the county city. It's enough for me to take the hard work money." She had heard in the afternoon that Shao Qingyuan had called a few strong laborers from the village to help pull the wild boars over. Of course he had to pay. His reputation in the village was really not good. If these people did not want money, they would not have any contact with him. However, when the 2 huge wild boars were pulled down the mountain, it still caused a commotion in the village. Many people wanted to go up and say a few words, but they were afraid of him. They could only follow the cart that contained the wild boars for a long time. They turned around and discussed in the village with relish. They were all guessing how much this wild boar could be sold for. Shao Qingyuan looked at her glowing eyes and laughed secretly. She clearly wanted the silver. Back then, we agreed to split it equally. The salary is only 1 tael of silver. You gave me a pheasant, so we're even. Take this silver. I don't want to be a person who goes back on my word. Gu Yundong nodded solemnly. In order to prevent you from becoming a despicable person who goes back on your word, I'll accept this silver. Shao Qingyuan was speechless. So I have to thank you? Gu Yundong hugged the money, and she was overjoyed. It would be better to have more gentlemen like Shao Qingyuan in the future. They could still work together in the future. How was this a wolf cub? It was obvious that he was a good person. Now that she had the money to build a house, Gu Yundong was happy. She asked casually, "You just came back from the county? Have you eaten dinner?" "No." Gu Yundong replied with an "oh," and did not seem to hear what he said at all. It was only when he turned around and entered the kitchen that she suddenly came back to her senses and looked at his back in surprise. "Ah. What are you doing? Didn't you want me to stay for dinner?" Shao Qingyuan had an expression that said, "If not, why did you ask me if I had eaten?" Gu Yundong looked at him and then at the silver in his arms. He said affirmatively, "Of course. You worked so hard. It's only right for you to have a meal." Gu Yundong followed him into the kitchen. "The dishes are a little cold. I'll cook egg fried rice for you. That'll be faster." "All right." Shao Qingyuan sat on the stool and watched as she quickly picked eggs and scooped rice. With a ripping sound, the fragrance suddenly spread out and filled the entire kitchen. For some reason, this smell actually made Shao Qingyuan feel calm. Chapter 65. His previous surname was Li. This is my first time eating egg-fried rice. Shao Qingyuan looked at the big bowl in front of him. The golden eggs and white rice grains were intertwined on it. The grains were distinct. Amidst the smoke, a rich smell kept drilling into his nose, making his appetite increase. Gu Yundong had just taken off her apron and was stunned when she heard that. Then, she remembered that he had been treated as a wolf cub. She had heard a lot about Shao Qingyuan in the past 2 days. Shao Qingyuan was carried out of the 9 Tigers mountain by his grandfather. It was said that he was a newborn baby at that time. At that time, there was the corpse of a wolf beside him. It was unknown how it died. His grandfather's surname was Li. At that time, the Li family's eldest branch only had 2 daughters and had never had a son. So Grandpa Li put Shao Qingyuan under the name of the couple. Later on, the eldest branch gave birth to a son and did not treat Shao Qingyuan very well. When Shao Qingyuan was 14 years old, he was chased out by the eldest branch. Grandpa Li refused to accept it and left the Li family with Shao Qingyuan. However, not long after, Grandpa Li fell seriously ill and passed away. From then on, Shao Qingyuan changed his surname to Shao. This surname was discovered when he was still an infant. Shao Qingyuan's life in the past 10 years was actually not much different from the previous Gu Yundong. Later on, he was alone and probably had never learned how to cook egg fried rice. However, Gu Yundong did not know that Shao Qingyuan was not just incapable of cooking egg fried rice. He was simply a kitchen killer, the kind that could burn down half the kitchen with just one meal. Ever since Grandpa Li passed away, as long as the weather was hot, he would mostly work in the town and county and buy some food on the streets. Whenever he was in the village, he would buy dry rations and steamed buns in town for a few days. His food was very rough. Gu Yundong was at a loss for words as she watched him gobble down the food. After he finished eating and left, Gu Yundong returned to his room with the warm 40 taels of silver. The 3 of them had already fallen asleep in the room. Gu Yundong's heart was relieved and he quickly fell asleep. However, Shao Qingyuan had returned. At this moment, he was on a roof not far away. One hand was behind his head, and the other was touching his stomach. He was lying on his back and looking at the sky above his head. The light in his eyes was even brighter than in the day. Gu Yundong slept contentedly. Without Madame Fong and her daughter's banter early in the morning, she felt that the entire world was quiet. With the money, she couldn't wait to go to the homestead to look at the newly built house. This time, she brought Madame Yang and the other 2 along. The homestead was in full swing. Feng Danning had already brought more than 20 young men to work. When he saw her, Feng Danning immediately walked over. "How is it? Everyone looks good, right?" It was indeed not bad. Most of these people were from this village, and some were from the neighboring village. They were all hired by Feng Danning. Gu Yundong offered a high price, so the people who came were naturally happy. Most people only paid 30 copper coins a day to build a house. Although lunch was included, they only ate boiled cabbage and plain steamed buns. How could these be worth 10 copper coins? They might as well go home and eat their own food. Someone also greeted Gu Yundong. Seeing that the young lady was clean and refreshing, their impression of her increased. Gu Yundong smiled and nodded one by one. Seeing that everyone was sweating profusely, she thought for a moment and turned to knock on the door of the house next door. Her homestead was remote, and there were only 2 or 3 neighbors around. Chapter 66. Zeng family. The family's surname was Zeng, and the house they lived in was not big. The person who opened the door was a 6 or 7-year-old girl. When she saw an unfamiliar person standing at the door, she asked timidly, "Who are you looking for?" As soon as she finished speaking, another woman rushed over and looked at Gu Yundong in confusion. "Hello, Auntie. I'm Gu Yundong, who has just come to Yongfu village. The house next door that is being built belongs to my family. We will be neighbors from now on. One came over firstly to greet Auntie. I've disturbed you during this period of time. Secondly, I want to ask Auntie for a favor." Gu Yundong said with a smile, her attitude very kind. Madame Dong felt that she was very refined when she heard her speak. She knew that this girl was from the Gu family next door, who wanted to build a house of bricks and tiles. They would definitely have a lot of contact in the future, so she quickly retreated and said, "Let's talk first." Gu Yundong entered and casually glanced at the Gu residence's courtyard. It was very clean. The courtyard was not big, and the house looked like it had been in disrepair for a long time. Madame Dong brought her into the central room and asked, "What do you want me to help with?" "Tell me." "I want to borrow Aunt's kitchen to make a pot of ginger tea," Gu Yundong explained. "The weather is a little cold now. The uncles outside are helping my family build a house and they are sweating. When the wind blows, they will easily catch a cold. Some ginger tea can warm their stomach. I wonder if it's convenient for Aunt? Madame Dong was only stunned for a moment before she immediately nodded. It's convenient. Of course it's convenient. It won't take much. Sit for a while. We have ginger at home. I'll get it for you. The ginger was all grown by her family. There was a lot. Madame Dong quickly brought her a handful. Gu Yundong did not stand on ceremony. Not only did he borrow ginger and firewood, but he also borrowed their bucket and bowl. After cooking, he carried them out with Madame Yang. Feng Danning was still wondering where she had gone. When he saw her carrying ginger tea over, a trace of surprise flashed across his face. Gu Yundong told him what he meant. Everybody has been working for half a day and your mouth is dry. One saw someone scoop some raw water and drink it. If this continues, he will easily fall sick. So I borrowed the Zeng family's kitchen to make a pot of ginger tea. It's warm and comfortable to drink. If you're not used to the taste of ginger tea, there's also boiling water. Uncle Feng, get everyone to come over and drink it. Feng Danning had never seen any hirer who made ginger tea. At most, they would put boiled water aside and let them drink it. This young lady was really not bad. This way, everyone's hearts were hot and they worked even harder. After Gu Yundong and Feng Danning finished speaking, she returned to the Zeng family. Madame Dong was cleaning up in the kitchen. When she saw her enter, she smiled and did not say anything. Gu Yundong took out a handful of copper coins and stuffed them into Madame Dong's hands. Madame Dong was shocked and quickly returned the copper coins. What are you doing? It's just a few pieces of ginger. Auntie, this money is not only for today. It will take more than a month to build my house. I can't come over every day, so I want to trouble Auntie to help me cook a pot every day. There's no need to make ginger tea every day. The boiling water is fine too. Take this money as my salary for hiring Auntie. Besides, someone has to pick the firewood and water from Auntie's house. Madame Dong was stunned. She looked down at the 200 copper coins in her hand, and thought of the man who could only lie on the bed after his leg was smashed. She also thought of the few young children at home. She gritted her teeth and took the money back. Thank you. Then I'll have to trouble you, Aunt. Gu Yundong then left the Zeng family's courtyard. Unexpectedly, just as she stepped out, she saw the door of the neighboring house open. She looked at the man who had just stepped out of the door in surprise. Chapter 67. Finally here Shao Qingyuan turned around and saw her. He did not say anything. He held a coarse steamed bun in his hand and took a big bite. There were immediately some steamed bun crumbs stuck to his dry lips. It was so dry that it seemed difficult to swallow. Gu Yundong felt as if her throat and eyes were blocked, especially when she saw a small piece of steamed bun fall to the ground and smash into the soil, creating a small pit. Gu Yundong was speechless. How hard was it? Could it be digested? She couldn't help but swallow. Behind her, she heard Madame Dong's hurried footsteps. Yundong, one don't have anything good at home. Those are vegetables planted by my family. There are many in the courtyard. Take them back and eat them. She walked out with a basket in her hand. When she looked up, she saw Shao Qingyuan from next door. It's Qingyuan. You didn't go out today? Why are you eating steamed buns again? How can you eat steamed buns every day? Come to Auntie's house to eat tonight. Madame Dong seemed to be quite familiar with Shao Qingyuan, so she spoke much more casually. Shao Qingyuan took another bite of the hard steamed bun in front of Gu Yundong and said coldly, "No, I'm busy." With that he left. Gu Yundong wanted to ask him if he wanted to drink some water to wash down the food, but he had already disappeared. Madame Dong turned around and saw her expression. She immediately misunderstood and said carefully, "Yundong, don't be afraid. Qingyuan isn't as scary as the villagers say. His house is next door. We've been neighbors for a few years and one know Qingyuan's character better than those people. He's very good." Gu Yundong was stunned. This was the first time she had heard a positive comment about Shao Qingyuan. Unexpectedly, he lived next door. Wouldn't he be her neighbor in the future? Wasn't this helpful neighbor who was on good terms with her a good thing? Hence, Gu Yundong nodded. "Aunt, I know. I'm not the kind of person who will believe whatever people say." She took the basket from Madame Dong's hand. I won't stand on ceremony with the vegetables. Madame Dong heaved a sigh of relief. Just take it. Come back after you're done eating them. Gu Yundong led the three of them back. When they passed by their homestead, they saw that the young men had stopped to rest and drink ginger tea. When she saw them, they immediately greeted her warmly and thanked her very much for the ginger tea. They expressed that their heart would feel warm after drinking it and that they would work hard to reassure her. Gu Yundong nodded and told them to be careful. When she walked over, someone whispered, "This young lady from the Gu family is really good. Not only do we earn a lot of money from working for her, but we also feel comfortable. Sigh, it's a pity that she doesn't know the ways of the world." That's right. There's no adult man in this family to protect her. If she has money, she should hide it. She just arrived in a strange village and doesn't know anyone. She dares to spend so much money to build a green brick and tile house. This is too eye-catching. I reckon the hooligans in the village will soon set their sights on her. Shall we find Brother Feng and ask him to remind the young lady? Okay. Feng Danning had indeed told Gu Yundong to be more careful these few days, especially when she slept at night. He told her to lock the doors and windows, set a trap by the door, and shout if there was any movement. However, he did not expect that night, a few thieves would sneak into Madame Fang's house. At this moment, Gu Yundong, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened her eyes. She stared at the dark room and curled his lips slightly. They were finally here. Chapter 68. Where is she? Gu Yundong quietly sat up on the bed. He glanced at the three people who were still sleeping soundly and shook Gu Yunshu awake. The little thing was extremely sleepy and could not help but rub her eyes. He opened his mouth and called out, "Sister, Shao." Gu Yundong lowered her voice and pointed at the door. She said in a low voice, "Do you still remember what one told you before?" Gu Yunshu suddenly sobered up and thought of what his eldest sister had said to him. "I remember that someone wanted to steal our money, cut off our escape route, and dig up our ancestral grave." He clenched his fists. Big sister, did the thieves come? Thanks to his training during his escape, although Gu Yunshu hated these thieves, he was not afraid. Therefore, not only did he not hide under the blanket, but he also looked like he was about to go out and fight with them. Yes. Gu Yundong smiled and silently opened the door of the room. He walked to the chair in the central room and sat down. Then, he stared at the two-door door not far away, waiting for them to enter. Gu Yunshu immediately took out a wooden stick from the corner and moved to her side, ready for battle. At this moment, in the courtyard outside, four sneaky figures were climbing down from the wall. Perhaps because the wall was a little high, one of them even sprained his ankle and almost cried out. Another person beside him immediately covered his mouth and nose with great force, almost suffocating him. Which way? After adapting to the position in the courtyard, these people began to observe the surrounding environment. This was really their first time coming to Madame Fang's house. After all, there was a lot of trouble in front of a widow's door, and this widow was the second daughter-in-law of the village chief's family. Therefore, these thieving hooligans would not wander around the vicinity for no reason, let alone have the chance to enter this house. Now that Madame Fang was not at home, there was a rich person living at home who did not have any backing. The prey had delivered themselves to their door. I've asked around. The Gu family of 4 lives in the room on the left. Okay, 111 go in with Big Chen and Zhuangzi in a while. Goshing, you stay outside and keep watch. Sure thing. Brother, I've asked around. The Gu family's house costs at least 70 to 80 taels. One reckons she's already given Feng Danning a few taels. The rest are probably in the room. Don't worry about the 2 children from the Gu family. The children are all sleeping soundly. When we go in later, we'll follow the usual rules. Big Chen and I will use daggers to take care of the 2 older ones. In case they wake up, we can threaten them not to make a sound. Brother, you will find the silver. When I think about how we're going to have dozens of taels of silver soon, I'm so excited that one want to go to the toilet. Good for you. Let me tell you, it's definitely not just a few dozen taels. Think about it. If you only have 70 to 80 taels, would you be willing to take them all out to build such a big green brick house? It's not like that a straw hut can't be lived in. I think it's at least a few hundred taels. Damn, I'm so excited that I want to go to the toilet. The few of them approached the central room excitedly. They did not know that Gu Yundong would dare to build a house worth 100 taels of silver, when she did not even have 70 to 80 taels of silver. Gu Yundong heard the sound of footsteps approaching and also heard a faint groan. The corners of her lips curled up as she waited for these people to walk right into her trap. However, after waiting and waiting for a long time, the door was still not pushed open. Gu Yundong held the stick and almost fell asleep again. Gu Yundong finally lost her patience. He opened the door of the central room and looked out. Where was she? Chapter 69. Yes, he did it. The courtyard was cold and empty. Not to mention people. There was not even a shadow. If not for the fact that the footprints in the courtyard were especially messy under the moonlight, indicating that a few people had indeed approached this place just now, Gu Yundong would have suspected that the voices she had heard previously were all illusions. But, why did the thieves who were still here just now disappear? Gu Yunshu ran out. Eldest sister? Why is there no one? Gu Yundong rubbed his chin and thought for a while. Could it be that they have other schemes? What? I don't know. Gu Yundong let him enter the house first. She went to the kitchen and toilet to check. There was indeed no one there, so he returned. Gu Yunshu hurriedly asked in a low voice. Eldest sister, have you found them? No, maybe. They came here tonight to scout the area. That was all she could think of. But for the sake of caution, Gu Yundong did not sleep the entire night and was highly focused. Hence, when she went out the next day, there were obvious dark circles under her eyes. Therefore, she planned to make a trip to the homestead in the morning and catch up on sleep as soon as she returned, in case those thieves came again at night. Unexpectedly, when she went to the Zeng family's courtyard, she saw Shao Qingyuan again. There was no one in the courtyard. Madame Dong was making ginger tea. Her daughter, the 7-year-old girl she had seen yesterday, was helping to light the fire. Her 9-year-old son and 5-year-old son were not at home. They had gone out to collect firewood. Gu Yundong sat down in front of Shao Qingyuan and asked him, Did Aunt ask you to come for dinner? No, Shao Qingyuan said. I'm waiting for you here. Gu Yundong was surprised. Waiting for me? What's the matter? Are you going up the mountain to hunt wild boars again? Ah, did you discover the traces of the third wild boar? Shao Qingyuan. I didn't go up the mountain for the past 2 days. I was waiting for you to tell you that your house is being targeted. Shao Qingyuan's expression was serious. Last night, 4 hooligans climbed into your courtyard to steal something. You saw them? Yes. Shao Qingyuan nodded. One knocked them out and took them away. One had to leave their name behind when doing a good deed. Gu Yundong did not know whether to say it or not. Her expression was especially complicated, and her dark circles were even more eye-catching. Shao Qingyuan could not help but frown. What's wrong? Gu Yundong thought that he had good intentions and she had to appreciate it. Hence, she tried her best to be tactful and said, Actually, I've been waiting for the thieves to come to my house for the past 2 days. It's like this. One think that many people will be jealous of my house after it's built. Instead of guarding against people playing tricks all day, it's better to make an example out of them and let everyone see the consequences of having designs on my family. Don't think that my family is easy to bully without an adult man. Last night, I sat in the central room, waiting for them. As she was speaking, she seemed to have heard someone grunt. She originally thought that the thieves had accidentally bumped into something and cried, but it turned out that it was not the case. Shao Qingyuan tightened his grip and pursed his lips tightly. Gu Yundong really had no intention of blaming him. However, Shao Qingyuan took a deep look at her dark circles and suddenly stood up. Got it. Then he left. His long legs were striding. Gu Yundong did not even have time to say, thank you. She touched her forehead and secretly sighed. After exchanging a few words with Madame Dong, Gu Yundong went back and slept for the entire afternoon. She was not particularly sleepy at night. Hence, when she heard the commotion in the courtyard outside, she suddenly sat up from the bed. Chapter 70. Sent back this time, Gu Yundong did not wake up her brother who was sleeping soundly holding his stomach. She walked out quietly. The moonlight was still as bright as yesterday, illuminating the entire courtyard. As soon as Gu Yundong opened the door of the central room, she saw 4 black shadows in the middle of the courtyard. He looked closer and realized that they were 4 sacks. What were they? There was no movement from the sack. Gu Yundong looked around and hesitated for a moment before going forward to untie the rope on the sack. Then he saw a human head. Whoa! Gu Yundong suddenly took a step back. To be honest, if she had not experienced many things and did not have a strong mental fortitude, she would have thought that there was a murder and body dumping case. She would have screamed in fear and summoned her neighbors over. Who the F***ck left him here? Gu Yundong cursed whoever did this. She calmed herself down and went forward again. Now that she took a closer look, the person in the sack was still covered with a black cloth. He looked like a thief? Gu Yundong's eyes widened and she suddenly came back to her senses. She looked at the 4 sacks again. Wasn't that the number of people Shao Qingyuan had told her? So these people were thrown here by Shao Qingyuan? Gu Yundong felt as if a mouthful of blood was stuck in her chest. She could not spit it out. Her head hurt. After a while, she went forward and patted the face of the person in the sack. Hey, wake up, wake up. Ugh! Xianxia opened his eyes in a daze. His mind was in a daze for a while. In the next moment, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly shouted, "Hero!" Before he could say the words "spare my life," his mouth was blocked by a rag. He whimpered twice, and his eyes adapted to the moonlight. He finally saw who the person in front of him was. Xianxia's eyes widened. Wasn't this the little girl from the Gu family? He remembered that, last night, the few of them came to her house to steal something. Then they were hit on the back of the head. When they woke up, their eyes were covered and their mouths were gagged. He didn't know where they were, but they were ambushed. At that time, he thought that he was going to be trafficked into a black kiln to be a laborer and live a life worse than death. However, before he could escape, he was beaten half to death and fainted again. When he woke up again, that person beat him up again. He thought that he had encountered a pervert. He did not expect that when he woke up, he would actually see who the person in front of him was. Could it be that she was the one who knocked out the 4 of them last night? No. One don't think so? Gu Yundong seemed to see the changes in life in his eyes. In the end, under his frightened gaze, she finally said faintly, "What's your name?" Answer the question properly and don't shout. Otherwise, you might lose your fingers. Gu Yundong held a dagger and pulled out his bound hand. The dagger flashed coldly and was placed on his finger. With a little force, blood could be seen. Xianxia was scared to death. Hence, after Gu Yundong removed the cloth ball from his mouth, he immediately answered obediently, "My name is Xianxia. You came to my house in the middle of the night to steal something, right?" Xianxia immediately shook his head and denied, "No, we were just passing by." Before he could finish speaking, he felt a sharp pain on his finger and hurriedly nodded. "We're here to steal. We saw that you can build such a big house, so you must be rich. There's no man in your family, so we can easily succeed. After that, you don't have anyone to trouble us. Other than me, there are Xianxia, Big Qian, and Gosheng. Xianxia is our big brother." "That's right. Didn't you give me a clear explanation? 111 treat you better tomorrow." Gu Yundong smiled and put away the dagger. For some reason, Xianxia shuddered. Why? She was clearly a 13-year-old girl. Why did she make him feel so scary? Could it be that he had been traumatized by her a few times during the day and was subconsciously afraid of her? What does tomorrow mean? You'll know when the time comes. Gu Yundong raised his hand and Xianxia fainted again. Chapter 71. Time to settle the score. The next morning, not long after dawn, a few children ran around the village and shouted, "Hurry up and take a look. The Gu family has caught thieves. It's Xianxia, Big Qian, and Gosheng." One heard that they were caught on the spot when they were stealing. An adult, who was about to go to the field, could not help but stop the children. "What did you say just now? Who caught those hooligans?" The children were still holding the candy in their hands. As they licked it lovingly and reluctantly, they said, It's the Gu family that wants to build a green brick house in our village. The 4 of them have been arrested. Now, they're at second Aunt Chen's house. What? An adult beside him had a look of disbelief on his face. Doesn't the Gu family not even have a strong laborer? They still have the ability to catch those hooligans? Don't tell me it's the opposite. Let's go and take a look. One don't think it's possible. Those bastards steal all day long. They're very skilled. They've never been caught on the spot. That's right. I heard that last time. They even set their sights on Master Wang. There were many men in that family, and 2 chickens were even stolen. Master Wang went to Liangzi's family to settle the score, but because there was no evidence to prove that they did it, he could only suffer. Let's go and see what's going on. The children went all the way and even went to the 4 people's houses to tell them. Goxing and Big Chen's house was not in Yongfu village. It was in the neighboring village and was not far away. 2 slightly older children got 2 more pieces of candy from Gu Yundong and immediately ran to their houses to inform them. When the people in the village walked to the Chen house in 2s and 3s, they saw 4 people tied up on the trunk of the big tree outside their house. Wasn't it Liangzi and the others? There was a stool beside the tree, and Gu Yundong sat there eating melon seeds. Madame Yang and the others were not around. They should be in the house and had not come out. Everyone stopped in their tracks and did not dare to go forward. It was Feng Daning's wife, Lu Ho Hot, who came over from behind. She was the first to speak to her. Yundong, what's going on? I heard that these 4 bastards went to your house to steal things and were caught red-handed by you? You caught them? As Feng Daning was building a house for Gu Yundong, he was full of praise when he mentioned her at home. Lu Ho Hot had only seen Gu Yundong twice. Compared to the other people in the village who had never even spoken to her, she was more familiar with her. Gu Yundong gave her half of the melon seeds. Auntie, eat them. I made them myself. Lu Ho Hot looked at the fragrant melon seeds in her hand in a daze. She could not help but eat one. Yes, it really smelled good. She could not be bothered to ask any more and started eating. This scene made the onlookers, who wanted to know the truth, want to go up and hit her. Eat, eat, eat. You haven't eaten melon seeds in half your life, right? Gu Yundong looked around and immediately saw Liangzi and his family from afar. She stuffed the remaining melon seeds into Lu Ho Hot's hands and clapped her hands. She walked to the 4 of them and woke them up. It's dawn. It's time to settle the score. Wake up. Zhuangzi was the first to open his eyes. When he saw her, he immediately felt his fingers begin to hurt. He immediately squeezed out a very ugly fawning smile. Liangzi was the second to wake up. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw that they were tied up. In front of him was Gu Yundong's harmless face. He immediately shouted angrily, "Stupid girl, did you tie us up? Let go quickly, or 111 sell you to a brothel." Chapter 72. Slander. Gu Yundong snorted and punched him in the stomach. Liangzi almost vomited. He widened his eyes and scolded with difficulty, "Stupid girl." Liangzi's family, who had just run over, looked up and saw this scene. They immediately rushed up to hit her. "Where did this bitch come from? She just came to our village and dares to deal with our village. Do you think there's no one in our family?" The person who scolded him was Liangzi's mother, Jin Yuexiang. She was in her 40s and was running on her feet. The first to rush up and hit her was Liangzi's father, Hu Qianlai. His large palm slapped her head like a bowl. However, just as he arrived in front of Gu Yundong, he heard a sneer. Then, he felt a pain in his stomach and fell back 2 to 3 meters. Tisk. Fortunately, Hu Qianlai was strong. Otherwise, he would not have fallen back, but would have flown back. But even so, Gu Yundong's kick still stunned all the onlookers present. Jin Yuexiang, who had been cursing and running over, suddenly stopped. Her voice was stuck in her throat like a duck that could not breathe, and her face was filled with shock. The scene was dead silent. Gu Yundong retracted his leg and patted the bottom of her pants. She then asked with a smile, "You rushed over to shout for a fight the moment you arrived. It was clearly your son who was caught stealing into my house. As parents, aren't you ashamed and apologetic? Instead, you're finding trouble with me, the victim. With parents like you, No wonder your son became a thief. Her voice finally made everyone react. Jin Yuexiang hurriedly ran to Hu Qianlai's side and helped him up. Hu Qianlai was furious, but his stomach hurt too much. He didn't expect this girl's feet to be so strong, like an adult man. The two of them immediately did not dare to go forward and attack anymore. However, when they saw their son tied up there, their hearts still ached and they were angry. They could only stand far away and curse. Whose son is a thief? You're the thief, woman. Don't tell me you're trying to blame my son for being a thief when you've stolen something? I see that you're dressed alluringly and indecently at such a young age. You might have been caught by my son last night. Now, you're a thief and you're calling my son a thief. The pain in Liangzi's stomach finally eased. He didn't see his father being kicked away. When he came back to his senses, he heard his mother cursing. He hurriedly nodded and echoed, "Yes, yes, yes." We realized that she had an ambiguous relationship with someone, which ruined the reputation of our village. That's why we couldn't stand it and wanted to catch her in the act. I didn't expect that man to know how to punch and kick. He knocked the four of us unconscious. As he spoke, he felt as if he had found the truth. He became even more excited as he spoke. That man caught us the night before yesterday and locked us in the house for the entire day. Look at the injuries on our faces. This is how they came about. He wanted us to admit that we stole money. The more Liangzi spoke, the more he felt that this was the case. Otherwise, why would they faint the moment they entered the courtyard the night before? They had been hungry for the entire day yesterday and had been beaten up for the entire day. He did not believe that a little girl like Gu Yundong could do this. She definitely had a lover. However, what he said made sense. The surrounding villagers felt that it made sense and began to whisper to each other. On the other hand, Lu Hohot spat out a melon seed shell on Liangzi's face. Are you shameless? Who in our village doesn't know what kind of person you are? Everyone knows how sneaky you are. Aren't you afraid of retribution for slandering a young lady? Liangzi glared at her fiercely. How am one slandering her? I'm not the only one who saw it. If you don't believe me, ask Xianxia and the others, right? Chapter 73. Conditions for release. Liangzi looked at Xianxia from the corner of his eyes, indicating for him to speak quickly. Xianxia lowered his head slightly and whispered, "Stop talking." He had been woken up from the sack last night. He was different from Liangzi. There were still knife marks on his fingers. Gu Yundong's cold and sinister expression last night had left a deep impression in his heart. Seeing that he was not cooperating, Liangzi gritted his teeth in anger and shouted at Big Qian and Gosheng, "Tell me, did I say anything wrong? Did this brat get a wild man to knock us out last night and beat us up for the entire day?" The two of them looked at each other and were about to answer when they were kicked by Xianxia. Although their bodies and hands were tied, their feet were free. "Ouch!" they both cried, momentarily at a loss for words. They were actually still a little confused. Why had they been knocked unconscious and tied up here? What was going on? Originally, they followed Liangzi's lead. Whatever Liangzi said, they would do. But now, Xianxia did not allow them to say anything. What was going on? With their hesitation and Lu Hohot's explanation, the villagers believed Gu Yundong. When Jin Yuexiang saw that everyone was pointing at them, she immediately jumped up. Liangzi is right. They went out the night before last and didn't come back. She must have beaten them up for the entire day. My poor son. Just because the two of us doted on him and didn't let him work, his reputation in the village is bad. Now that he finally did a good deed, no one believes him. Stupid girl, little slut, quickly let my son go. A shoe had appeared in Gu Yundong's hand. She walked to Liangzi and raised her hand to slap him. Jin Yuexiang screamed, "What are you doing? If you curse me again, 111 slap him." Don't you dare." Jin Yuexiang was about to rush over when Gu Yundong turned his head and smiled at her. He raised his foot. "Come here." Jin Yuexiang was about to reach her. She hurriedly stopped her legs and did not dare to go forward. This girl could even kick her man away. If she went up, she might even lose half her life. You wretched girl, you." Slap, slap, slap. Gu Yundong did not hold back at all. "Come, continue." Jin Yuexiang saw that blood was flowing from the corner of her son's mouth and was so angry that her body was trembling. She couldn't care less and pounced on her. Gu Yundong did as she promised and kicked her. Come up and try again. She raised her eyebrows at Hu Qianlai and glanced at the families of the others who rushed over. Hu Qianlai looked at the old woman who was screaming and did not dare to move. Zhuangzi's parents had actually arrived earlier, but the two of them were honest. Now they felt a little guilty and did not have the face to cause trouble for Gu Yundong. Moreover, Gu Yundong was so cruel that they did not dare to do so. Gaoxing's father was also here. At this moment, he was glaring at Gaoxing. He was not looking at Gu Yundong, but at Gaoxing. Big Qian's family did not come. Since they were already here, Hu Qianlai wanted to urge the others to go with him. If the couple could not defeat Gu Yundong, could they not take down a little girl together? But before he could speak, Gaoxing's father, Zhao Zhu, stepped forward and asked Gu Yundong, "How can you let them go?" Chapter 74. County Magistrate listens to me. Gu Yundong looked at him. Zhao Zhu was quite burly, completely different from Gaoxing's thin and weak appearance. Gu Yundong did not beat around the bush. Since your son was caught by me while stealing in my place, it's simple. Each person will pay 5 taels of silver, and 111 let them go. Zhao Zhu frowned. Hu Qianlai had already cursed loudly. Dream on. You can snatch 5 taels of silver. I won't give you a single copper coin. Gaoxing's father, why are you talking nonsense with her? Let's attack together. You're strong. Can a little girl like her beat a few of us at the same time? Zhao Zhu pursed his lips, but Gu Yundong smiled at Hu Qianlai. I think you've forgotten who won am. As she spoke, she glanced around. These words were not meant for Hu Qianlai and the others, but for everyone in the village. One fled from Yongning Prefecture to Xuanhe Prefecture and then to Yongfu Village. On the way to Yongning Prefecture, thieves ran rampant, refugees were everywhere, corpses were everywhere, and people ate each other's children. I saw more dead people on the way than the villages here combined. But now, I'm standing here unscathed with surplus food and my mother and siblings. What do you think I relied on? Everyone present fell silent. That's right, what did she rely on? Beautiful? She was about to starve to death. Who would fancy a little girl? Money. Those bandits would snatch it right away. Could it be that you would be safe if you paid a portion? There was only one way to do that. To be ruthless. Look at the 2 kicks she gave Hu Qianlai and Jin Yuexiang just now. Look at the way she held her shoes and slapped Liangzi. How was she like those 13-year-old girls in their village who didn't even dare to argue with others? One came to Yongfu village to settle down, but that doesn't mean I'm easy to bully. If you dare to come to my house to steal, you have to pay the price. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. You can try. Zhao Zhu stopped talking. Hu Qianlai finally realized that this girl did not seem to be easy to bully. Only Jin Yuexiang did not understand the situation. She pointed at Gu Yundong and shouted, "One won't give them any money. If you have the ability, don't let them go. If you have the ability, beat them to death. Do you dare?" Gu Yundong shook his head. "I wouldn't dare." Jin Yuexiang was pleased. She knew it. Could it be that Gu Yundong dared to kill someone? Escape was escape. So what if she was ruthless back then? Now, in their Yongfu village, could she casually kill someone? She was just bluffing. "I wouldn't dare. Since you don't want to pay, I'll beat you up again, and report you to the authorities," Gu Yundong said coldly. The smile on Jin Yuexiang's face froze. Report to the authorities? Are you crazy? The commoners were not willing to interact with the government. Entering the government office was not as simple as losing a layer of skin. At that time, it would not be something that could be resolved with 5 taels of silver. That's right. Report it to the officials. When the time comes, let the county magistrate beat them up. They've been stealing for so long. They might be tortured dozens of times to extract a confession. They might be able to spit out a lot of things. When the judgment comes later, you'll have to compensate for everything that has been lost in the village over the years. Jin Yuexiang's expression changed slightly. You You're saying that the county magistrate will beat them as you say? As if the county magistrate will listen to you. Let me tell you, if you report it to the officials, you won't be able to gain anything. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. How do you know that the county magistrate won't listen to me? Everyone present was stunned. No, it couldn't be, right? Could it be that Gu Yundong knew the county magistrate? After all, this person was not a local. No one knew her background. Seeing how confident she was, the villagers were a little skeptical. However, just as everyone was whispering, a man's voice suddenly sounded from behind the crowd. Why didn't one know that the county magistrate knew a small village girl like you? Chapter 75. Can't stay here anymore. Everyone looked back and saw Madame Fong and her daughter standing behind the crowd. They did not know when these two people had returned. Beside them stood a young man who looked like he was from a rich family. This person pretended to be handsome and waved his fan. He slowly walked over from the back of the crowd and stood beside Zhao Zhu. He raised his eyebrows and sized up Gu Yundong. You're just a little girl. How dare you deceive your neighbors with the name of the county magistrate? You're quite bold. Chen Yulan hurriedly followed and introduced him to everyone. This is the young master of the Lu family in the county. Young Master Lu and the young master of the county magistrate's family are classmates and good friends. Yundong, you're too bold. How dare you deceive the county magistrate? If the Lord finds out, you'll be beheaded. Gu Yundong did not know who this person was, but she did not expect Chen Yulan to introduce him. Well, there's no problem then. She looked at young Master Lu. Young Master Lu is only familiar with the county magistrate's young master. How do you know who the county magistrate knows? Moreover, even if young Master Lu and the county magistrate are on good terms, so what? Could it be that His Excellency will tell you if everybody he knows? Lu Wei was at a loss for words. That seemed to make sense. In fact, he had only met the county magistrate a few times. Do you really know the county magistrate? Gu Yundong chuckled. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. She did not know the county magistrate, but she knew the prefecture magistrate. Lu Wei was a little uncertain. Seeing that she did not look guilty at all, he hesitated again. 111 Ask another day. Actually, he was just saying. How could he really dare to say these words in front of the county magistrate? Hu Qianlai and Jin Yuexiang were really speechless now. What should they do? This girl didn't seem to be afraid at all. She couldn't really be captured by the officials, right? Xianxia was a son of theirs that they had when they were old. They always spoiled him, which was why he had such a reckless personality. Zhao Zhu was the one who could see the situation clearly. He was straightforward. All right, 5 taels of silver then. Zhuangzi's parents looked at each other and said in a low voice with a bitter expression, Our family can't fork out 5 taels of silver now. Can you give us more time? We'll pool it together. Sure. Hu Qianlai was unhappy. He rolled his eyes and said, He's giving you 5 taels of silver, but what did you do to our Liangzi? At most, I'll give you 1 tael. Liangzi was the one who was beaten the most. When he heard this, he was a little unconvinced. Father, mother, I'm really not wrong. This bitch has a man. We were beaten up for the entire day yesterday. Zhuangzi finally couldn't take it anymore. Enough. Liangzi. There's no wild man. The one who captured us was this girl. Bullshit. Gu Yundong lifted her shoes and Liangzi shouted in horror, Give it to her, give it to her. His mouth was burning with pain and he began to drool as he spoke. Gu Yundong was satisfied. This person would not be obedient if she did not hit him. They each paid 5 taels of silver, but Big Qian's family did not come. Gu Yundong asked him to write an IOU. Then, he untied the rope and let them go. 5 taels of silver was not a small sum. The other villagers also saw that the 4 of them had spent a lot of money. If they wanted to offend her in the future, they would have to think twice. This was Gu Yundong's goal. She had to let them know that if they wanted to bully her family, they had to be prepared to spend money to avoid disaster. In addition, she had deliberately mentioned the county magistrate. Even if these people did not believe her, they would have some scruples. The crowd gradually dispersed. Gu Yundong was about to go back when she saw Chen Liang's second daughter-in-law coming over. "Yundong, my father-in-law is back and wants you to go over." Gu Yundong knew that Chen Liang had gone out early in the morning. Now that he was back, he asked her to go over. Did he hear about what happened here? She nodded and went to the village chief's house. Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered, she heard Madame Fang's voice. "I don't dare to let such a family stay in my place anymore." "What will the Wu family think of our family?" Chen Liang's expression was very ugly from the mother and daughter's words. You, Uncle Chen." Gu Yundong walked in. "So be it. I'll move out." To be honest, she was also very uncomfortable staying at Madame Fang's house. She originally thought that she had no other choice but to stay for a month. However, from the looks of it, it was not impossible to live in the town. Uncle Feng was a trustworthy person. With him watching over the situation, he did not have to rush back to Yongfu village to look at the house every day. She could also take the opportunity to see the environment of the town and the way to earn money. It was also convenient to buy things. Moreover, she had already achieved her goal of living in the village. Those who had ill intentions no longer dared to have any designs on her family. As soon as Gu Yundong finished speaking, Chen Liang frowned. "Then where are you going to stay?" After what happened today, no one in the village was willing to rent it to her. "Stay at my place." A voice suddenly sounded from the door. Chapter 77. Gu Yundong's decision. Everyone looked over and saw a woman standing at the door. The woman's voice was so soft that no one could hear what she said. It was Madame Dong? Dong Xiaolan slowly walked in and stood beside Gu Yundong. She smiled at her. "Yundong, if you don't mind, you can stay at my house." "Stay at your house?" Chen Liang looked at her in surprise. Because the Zeng family lived far away and the couple were quiet, their presence in the village was very low. However, Chen Liang still knew about her family's situation. The house was a little dilapidated. The man in the family had his leg smashed a few months ago and was still lying on the bed. The 3 children were still young. The family of 5 relied on Madame Dong to do some embroidery and exchange for a few copper coins. According to Feng Daneng, the Gu family had hired them to cook some ginger tea for everyone to drink every day. It seemed that they were very familiar with each other. Except before he could speak, Madame Feng said, "Your house? You have a man in your house. Madame Yang is good-looking, and Gu Yundong is at the age of marriage. If they stay at your house, won't others gossip?" These words were very unpleasant to hear, but they were also the truth. However, Chen Liang still glared at Madame Feng. Madame Feng pursed her lips and muttered softly, "For that bit of rent money, your family is really not careful." Dong Xiaolan blushed at her words and couldn't help but tug at her fingers. "Village chief, we want gossip if you stay at my house. Qingyuan promised me that he would let my man and big boy stay at his house. It's also convenient. Besides, the Gu family's new house is built next to ours. It's close for her to take a look." Chen Liang was stunned. Shao Qingyuan? That kid lived alone and had 2 rooms at home. Zhang Hu and his son lived in his house, which was not far from home. The problem was not big. However, he did not expect Shao Qingyuan to agree. They had been neighbors for so many years, and the relationship between the 2 families was better than he imagined. Chen Liang thought about it and felt that this was a good idea. If his sister-in-law was unwilling, there was no point in forcing her. It was inconvenient for both families to stay. Hence, Chen Liang turned around and asked Gu Yundong, "Yundong, what do you think?" "Yundong, although my house isn't big, it's quite clean. I'm also grateful to you for taking care of our family and giving me the job of making ginger tea. If you think it's okay, you can stay at my house. When you're busy, the girl and boy at home can help take care of Yunshu and Yunka. The distance is short to the homestead." Gu Yundong hesitated. Madame Dong was right. It was very convenient to stay at her house, especially since Yunshu and Yunka were 2 children. The village chief's Go Dan had gone to school in town. This was the reason why Chen Liang was not around this morning. He had personally sent his son to his master's house. Although she also wanted to send Yun Shu, she had to wait until she settled down. It would be good to have someone take her around the village during this period of time. Gu Yunka basically didn't go out much. Madame Yang and Madame Dong could talk, and she could rest assured if she went to the river to wash clothes. Yes, she actually felt that this idea was not bad. Gu Yundong was about to nod when Madame Feng sneered. You make it sound so nice. Isn't it for money? Dong Xiulan was a little angry. She had sincerely wanted to invite Gu Yundong over, but she had never thought about the rent. Gu Yundong ignored Madame Feng and smiled at Madame Dong. All right, then 111 have to trouble auntie. Dong Xiulan immediately waved her hands happily. No trouble, no trouble. Madame Feng snorted again and turned to leave. Gu Yundong finally looked at her. Wait a minute. Chapter 78. Anger you to death. Madame Feng turned around and asked angrily, What are you doing? Since I'm no longer staying at your house, it's time to return the 200 copper coins to me. Madame Feng was unhappy. Return them? You're the one who caused trouble for our family. Those 200 copper coins aren't even enough to compensate us. Chen Liang really didn't know that Madame Feng was such an unreasonable person before today. His face darkened. Give them back. You were the one who didn't keep your promise first. You should return the money to her. Madame Feng wanted to say something, but Chen Yulan tugged at her clothes. She could only say indignantly, Fine, I'll return them. However, their family has been living here for a few days. It's impossible to return all 200 copper coins. At most, it's 100 copper coins. Gu Yundong smiled and said, Since you want to calculate it this way, let's calculate it clearly. 200 copper coins is a month's rent. It's less than 7 copper coins a day. We've lived for 6 days, which is 40 copper coins. Return 160 copper coins. Actually, according to the normal contract, you broke the contract and refused to let us stay because of unknown dangers in the future. You should compensate us at least twice the amount. But for the sake of the village chief, forget it. I don't want to tangle with you anymore. Pay up. Madame Fang's eyes widened. What are you talking about? You want us to compensate you? That's impossible. At most, it's 100 copper coins. That's all I have. Gu Yundong smiled in a very friendly manner. Aunt Feng, did you not see the scene of Hu Liang's 4 families compensating me just now? It was really a confusing thing. Do you want me to help you recall? What's the difference between you and those hooligans? Madame Feng recalled Hu Liang's face that had been beaten into a pig's head. She immediately felt a little afraid. She could not help but hide behind Chen Liang. Uncle, look at what she's saying. She's threatening me. I'm the daughter-in-law of the Chen family. She's too much. Madame Zhou sneered. The daughter-in-law of the Chen family can't be unreasonable. Wouldn't nothing happen if sister-in-law returns the money to her? Sister-in-law, you make it sound so easy. You're not the one paying for it. Gu Yundong was impatient. Are you going to give it to me or not? She held a stick as thick as a finger in her hand. Nobody knew where it came from, but with a light snap, the sound of it was especially crisp and horrifying in the central room. Madame Fang's body trembled violently. She was not a bold person after all. She hurriedly nodded. 111 give them to you. Then let's go. Why were these people so despicable? If she didn't teach them a lesson, they would insist on struggling. Madame Feng looked at Chen Liang again. Chen Liang silently turned his head. Madame Feng could only dawdle out of the central room. When they returned home, Madame Feng asked Gu Yundong to move out quickly. Gu Yundong did not have many things. There were only 2 baskets and a big bag. She put the rest of the things in her spatial storage and tidied them up. Madame Dong followed over and helped carry a basket. When Gu Yundong and the others were about to leave, Madame Feng reluctantly took out 160 copper coins and handed them to her. Here, don't say that I took advantage of you. How unlucky. Hurry up and leave. Gu Yundong took the money and turned to Madame Dong. Auntie, Take these 160 copper coins and buy some vegetables and meat. We'll cook a good meal tonight and treat it as a celebration. Madame Dong originally thought that she was going to pay the rent. She did not want to accept it. When she heard that it was to buy groceries and meat, she hurriedly said, "All right, 111 buy it." Madame Fong was speechless and furious. Chapter 79. Moving Gu Yundong led Madame Yang and the other two to the Zeng house. Zhang Hu and his son had already moved into Shao Qingyuan's house. There were only 7-year-old Zheng Yu and 5-year-old Zheng Lu at home. The siblings were very happy to see them. One of them helped carry the luggage, while the other ran to Gu Yunshu's side and rubbed his head innocently, calling him brother. Dong Xiaolan smiled and said, "All Shu is 2 months older than you. You should call him big brother." Zhang Lu exclaimed, "Why is he an older brother again? I already have an older brother. Can't I call him younger brother?" Gu Yunshu shook his head and sighed mischievously. "It's my fault for being too hardworking. I came to this world 2 months earlier than you. I'm also very helpless. Don't be too sad. There's a good saying. This is fate." Zheng Lu was extremely disappointed and could only call him brother. However, when he turned around and saw the silly and small Gu Yunka, he immediately became happy and called her crisply, "Sister." "I hate my brother." Her bad brother called her fat girl again in the morning. She would complain to her eldest sister later and ask her to teach him a lesson and spank his butt. Xing Lu. Gu Yundong was overjoyed. Indeed, children had to play with their friends. Dong Xiaolan was also very happy. Her family was poor and lived in a remote place. The 3 children had helped the family work since they were sensible. They rarely had any friends. Now that the Gu family was living here, it felt lively. She instructed her daughter, Zhang Yu, "Mother will go buy groceries. Take sister Yundong to her room to settle down and take care of her younger siblings. If there's anything you don't know, you can go next door to look for your brother." The eldest son of the Zeng family was called Zhang Jia. He was currently taking care of his father at Shao Qingyuan's house. Zhang Yu agreed, and Dong Xiaolan left the house with the basket. Gu Yundong looked at the Zheng family. They seemed to have cleaned up the house better than when she came yesterday. It was only when she entered the room that she suddenly came back to her senses. The Zheng family seemed to have known that she was leaving Madame Fang's house and looking for a new place to stay. Otherwise, why would the Zheng father and son move so quickly? They had already tidied up the place beforehand. She turned around and asked Zhang Yu. The little girl blushed and replied shyly, "I don't know either." Before mother left, she said a few words. She didn't say anything else. After thinking for a while, she added, "But mother spoke to brother Shao before. Father was also carried over by brother Shao." Shao Qingyuan? Gu Yundong thought of the 4 sacks that had been thrown into the courtyard last night. It should have been Shao Qingyuan who had done it. Could it be that he had guessed that the Fong family would not let them stay, so he had asked the Dong family to invite them? For some reason, Gu Yundong felt his face heat up. It was not that she was thinking too much. Shao Qingyuan had helped her more than once. Not to mention the incident with the wild boar, just 2 days ago, he had knocked out 4 thieves who had entered her courtyard and dragged them away. Now, he had taken the initiative to help her solve the accommodation problem. Although Gu Yundong did not believe that Shao Qingyuan was a heartless person, she would definitely not treat him as a benevolent person who helped others for nothing. This person wouldn't have any feelings for her, right? Perhaps she had to find an opportunity to ask. Madame Dong quickly bought groceries back, mainly meat. There were vegetables in the garden, so there was no need to spend so much effort. She directly handed it to Gu Yundong. The meat and fish cost 60 copper coins. The rest of the money is here. There's firewood in the kitchen, and the water vat is full. You can use it directly. If you need anything, feel free to order Yuer around. I'll go to Qingyuan's house to brew medicine for my husband. I'll leave first." When Gu Yundong heard this, she knew that Madame Dong did not intend to take advantage of her family. She did not take her words to heart and even deliberately avoided them. She did not say anything. After Madame Dong left, she prepared more food before starting to cook Gu Yunk's favorite braised pork. Chapter 80. 60 feet high room. Gu Yundong was not a petty person. If others were friendly to her, she would naturally be generous. But if it was someone like Madame Fong, she did not even want to give her a single grain of salt. Gu Yong's eyes lit up as she looked at her elder sister's braised pork. As she swallowed, she said to Zeng Yu, "The braised pork is delicious. It's oily, fragrant, and soft. Take a bite." "Wow, it'll jump. You'll swallow it with a gulp." Zeng Yu tried her best not to look at the meat, but she could not close her ears. When she heard the little girl's yearning expression, she could not help but salivate. Hence, after a pause, she let go of Gu Yong's hand and said, "I'll go outside to water the vegetables." With that, she ran away. The little girl looked at her, fleeing back in confusion. "Wait, haven't you watered them?" Gu Yundong glanced at her with a smile. "You go and sit at the side. Be careful that the oil spills and you'll scream in pain again." "No, I won't. That's my brother." The little girl threw the blame on Gu Yunshu without hesitation. She explained with a serious expression, but she still turned around to look for Zeng Yu. Gu Yundong quickly cooked the braised pork. She took the fish to make soup. Thinking that the young lady liked boiled eggs, she cracked a few more eggs. There were a lot of vegetables in the backyard of the Zeng family. Gu Yundong asked Zeng Yu to pick some beans, a few potatoes and eggplants, and a cabbage. The eggplants were roasted with beans, and sour and spicy shredded potatoes, and she made cabbage noodles. She had cooked a lot, so almost 6 dishes were enough. When they were all served, Gu Yundong took off his apron and asked Zeng Yu, who was in the courtyard with Gu Yunka, to come over. Zeng Yu had long smelled the fragrance coming from the kitchen. She had never smelled it before. She didn't even need to look to know that it was delicious. "You, bring these dishes next door and let your father and the others eat. Also, call your mother back for dinner." Zeng Hu's leg was injured, so he could not be carried back and forth over a meal. Thus, Gu Yundong had already divided 2 portions of food. Zeng Yu was stunned. After a moment, she hurriedly shook her head. No. This is your food. We have food. You am moving today. Shouldn't we celebrate? Aren't you willing to celebrate with us?" Gu Yundong interrupted her. Zeng Yu hurriedly shook her head again. Yes. Then bring it over." Zeng Yu was no match for her. It was not right to say that she did not want to eat it, and it was even more wrong to eat it. After some thought, she turned around and ran away to ask her mother. Gu Yundong sighed. She was in a difficult position because she liked to take advantage of others. She was also in a difficult position because she was unwilling to take advantage of others. Life was so difficult. She simply went out to call Gu Yunshu. This kid and Zhang Lu were watching people build houses at the edge of the homestead. At the same time, she introduced Zhang Lu to where his room was. Even if he was spouting nonsense, and his finger was pointing at a wrong place, Zhang Lu nodded repeatedly, indicating that this little brother who was 2 months older than him was amazing. When Gu Yundong went to call him, Gu Yunshu was still unsatisfied and was saying that his room was 60 feet tall. Gu Yundong staggered and almost fell to the ground. 60 feet was 20 meters. How could you be so capable? The room was so high. Did you want to go to the sky? She slapped him on the side of the head and told him to get to work. Gu Yunshu carried the dishes to Shao Qingyuan's house next door. As soon as he left, there was a knock on the door. Chapter 81. Don't call him Wolf Cub. Gu Yundong was stunned. The moment she opened the door, a small figure rushed in like a cannonball. Yunshu am here." Gu Yundong took a closer look. Wasn't this Chen Liang's grandson? Nyodan ran in but did not see anyone. He turned around and ran back. "Sister Yundong, where's Yunshu?" "He went next door." "Then I'll go find him." After saying that, Nyodan ran away. He took a step out of the door and hurriedly stopped. As if he had thought of something, he slowly turned his head and looked at her. He asked carefully, "Next door? Is it that wolf cub's house?" Gu Yundong felt that education had to start from a child, especially since this child was close to her younger brother, so she corrected him. "His name is Shao Qingyuan, not Wolf Cub." "Nyodan, You can call him Brother Shao or Shao Qingyuan. But everyone called him that. Call him Brother Shao. Niu Dan immediately changed his words. Then I'll call you Brother Shao too. Good boy. Then, is that Brother Shao's house next door? 1-to-1 don't dare to go, Niu Dan said aggrievedly. Gu Yundong shrugged. Shu will be back soon. Then I'll wait for him at home. Niu Dan returned and walked towards the kitchen. He had smelled it just now. The kitchen smelled so fragrant. He wondered what it was. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked into the kitchen, he saw a small figure leaning on the table with a spoon. She was staring at the plate of meat in the middle, her little nose twitching as she tried to smell it. Niu Dan also sniffed hard twice. When they saw the dishes on the table, they almost drooled. He quickly walked over and asked Gu Yunka, if you want to eat, why don't you do it? Gu Yunka did not even turn around. Eldest sister said that before everyone is here, we can't eat yet. Otherwise she'll slap my hand. I'll smell the food first. Oh! Niu Dan climbed onto the stool and stared at the dishes in front of him. As he watched, he could not help but lean on the table and sniffle with Gu Yunka. When Gu Yunshu returned from delivering the vegetables, he heard from his eldest sister that Niu Dan had come to look for him in the kitchen. He quickly brought Zeng Lu in. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered, he saw two little heads lying on the edge of the table, taking deep breaths with an intoxicated expression. Gu Yunshu's lips twitched as he walked to Niu Dan's side. Niu Dan, why are you looking for me? Niu Dan did not answer. It smelled so good. Compared to this, it felt like the meat his mother made was grass. Gu Yunshu simply pulled him off the stool. Niu Dan, why are you looking for me? I want to eat braised pork, Niu Dan replied subconsciously. Gu Yunshu exclaimed. Huh! Niu Dan suddenly reacted. When Dong Xiaolan heard that, she sighed slightly. Actually, Qingyuan is also a pitiful child. He hasn't eaten good food since he was young. In the past, when he was in the Li family, that family didn't treat him as one of their own at all. Later, he moved out with old man Li and lived a hard life. Isn't he making money now? Yes, he can earn money, but Qingyuan doesn't know how to cook. Last time, he tried to cook porridge, but the kitchen was half burned. Later, his kitchen was deserted. One asked him to come to my house to eat, but he didn't come. He only came once every 10 times I called him. Actually, even if he came, my culinary skills can't even compare to half of yours. He goes to town every 2 to 3 days and buys a large bag of steamed buns and pancakes. He can eat them for 3 to 5 days before buying them again. Gu Yundong was stunned. She recalled the last time she saw him nibbling on a dry steamed bun. Her expression became exceptionally complicated. What a pitiful man. Chapter 83:1 will definitely find father. After listening to Shao Qingyuan's explanation, Gu Yundong felt a little ashamed of her wild guesses. Sigh, he had suffered for so many years. He just wanted to eat something delicious. Look at how dirty she thought of him. It was not a big deal to cook another person's food. After all, he had helped her so much just to satisfy her appetite. Gu Yundong despised herself as he returned to his room. As soon as the door was closed, Shao Qingyuan went up the wall and sat on the wall next door, looking in her direction. He had been too hasty. She was more vigilant than he had imagined. She must have encountered a lot of things on the way to escape. Now she did not trust people very much, especially people who did not ask for anything in return. She was exceptionally vigilant. He had clearly heard her forbid Niu Dan from calling him a wolf cub. Shao Qingyuan frowned and jumped down from the wall. Gu Yundong, on the other hand, slept much more comfortably after changing the environment. Dong Xiaolan had tidied up their room very well. She did not deliberately teach them a lesson like Madame Fong and her daughter. It gave off a very warm feeling. However, in the middle of the night, she was woken up by a low cry. Gu Yundong suddenly opened his eyes and looked around. He realized that it was his mother, Madame Yang, who was crying. She was stunned for a moment before she quickly went to Madame Yang's side and called her softly. Mother, are you feeling unwell? Due to her intelligence, Madame Yang's emotions did not fluctuate much. Unless she was hurt, she would not cry. Gu Yundong called her for a long time, but Madame Yang seemed to be possessed. She refused to wake up no matter what. There were even 2 streaks of tears at the corners of her eyes. Gu Yundong was afraid that something was wrong with her head. She raised her voice and pinched her nose. Mother, wake up. Mother? Gu Yunshu was woken up. He rubbed his eyes and immediately woke up when he saw the situation. Big sister, what's wrong? Gu Yundong could not be bothered to answer his question. He pinched her nose and Madame Yang finally woke up. She looked at Gu Yundong in a daze and suddenly hugged her. Da jiang wu wu. Dajiang? Gu Dajiang? Gu Yundong did not expect her mother to dream of Gu Dajiang and cry so miserably. She thought that her mother's intelligence was only at the age of 4 or 5, and that she would no longer understand the relationship between a man and a woman. But now, it seemed that she had taken it for granted. Gu Yundong allowed her mother to hug her. She patted her back and comforted her softly. It's all right, it's all right. You had a nightmare. You'll be fine when you wake up. Madame Yang was crying uncontrollably. However, she was not wailing. Instead, she seemed to be trying her best to suppress her cries. However, this made other people's hearts ache even more. Gu Yunshu, who was at the side, was quickly moved. He also wiped the corners of his eyes with his hand. Eldest sister. Mother dreamed of father. Is it because something happened to father and mother cried? Eldest sister. I don't want father to encounter anything. One miss father. Can we still see father in the future? Gu Yundong pursed his lips. After a moment he said firmly, we will see him. Tomorrow one will ask someone to find out. If there's no news, one will personally go to Qingyuan prefecture to look for him after the house is built. Gu Yundong wanted to see her father dead or alive. Although it was hard to predict whether he would live or die on the way to escape, Gu Yundong was still unwilling to give up if she did not work hard. The next day, Gu Yundong planned to make a trip to the county. However, as soon as she went out, she saw Feng Danning looking at her with a guilty expression. Yundong, Uncle Feng has let you down. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.